Welcome to the Delingpole with me, James Delingpole, and perhaps you can tell from my attire that I'm about to tell you the exciting news of the date, the long-awaited announcement of the date of the Dick and James Christmas special. Now, those of you who came last year will know that this is, as the name implies, it is a very special event. It's conveniently located in the middle of England, in a lovely venue, and there is not included, but it's very reasonable. There's really good pizza and really good sort of like beef stew. I think we had last year. It was very good anyway. And we have entertainment. We have a lot. Obviously, the highlight of the evening is a live podcast with me and not my special guest, just my guest, Dick. Dick and I on stage, chatting our usual interesting, digressive rubbish. But the main thing, and I expect that unregistered chickens will be playing, and I expect we might be singing Jerusalem. And there might be some Christmas carols, but mainly, it's about you. What people always say is, actually they don't say this, but I think they feel it. They don't say, actually, James was crap. The other stuff was good. They don't say that. But this is me telling you, even though I'm good, even though you'll love to come and see me with Dick, the best part for me is just like everyone really gets on. It's like if you haven't met them, then they are the best friends you've ever met. There's a really good atmosphere. I think you would be seriously missing out if you didn't come. I anticipate massive demand for tickets. They sold out last year, and they probably will get. So I'd get in there early. I'm trying to encourage you this year to use cash. Cash is king. We love cash. We want to support cash. So if you can pay by cash, it's better. Also, I think then the money doesn't go into sort of administration fees for whatever the other thing is. Anyway, I hope to see you there. There'll be VIP tickets. This time I'm going to get it sorted. There will be bell ringing for the special VIP guests. And we might go to a different church, I don't know, depending on what the requests are. But and maybe a walk with James as well, and it'll be lovely. And you're going to love it. So the date, November the 28th. November the 28th, James and Dick's Christmas special. Details below this advert. See you there. You're going to love it.
I love Delingpole. Go and subscribe to the podcast, baby. I love Delingpole. And listen another time, subscribe with me.
Welcome to the Delingpole with me, James Delingpole. And I know I always say I'm excited about this week's special guest. But before we meet him, let's have a word from one of our sponsors. Gold and silver. They've been going like rockets recently, especially gold. I think silver will follow. But I'm no expert. What do I know? I just know that I've got some gold and I've got some silver, and I'm very happy to have some. There are two ways of owning it. Either you can buy physical gold in the form of gold and silver bullion, or in the form of coins, or you can take the monetary metals option. Monetary Metals is a company, and I've had the CEO, Keith Weiner, on the podcast twice to explain how it all works. It's a way of owning physical gold and silver, but you get paid interest on your holding. Now, this is different. When you hold gold in a vault, you have to pay a fee, a management fee. But if you buy gold and silver through Monetary Metals, you get paid interest. So you don't have to pay storage charges. You're actually earning income on your gold, which is paid in the form of more gold and silver. It sounds like it doesn't make any sense, but actually it works because the jewelry industry pays money to Monetary Metals for which enables it to pay you interest on your gold. It does work. So if you want to buy gold and silver through Monetary Metals, you go to Monetary Metals, monetary-metals.com/Delingpole, and you can find out more about it. Monetary-metals.com/Delingpole. You can earn up to 4% in their leasing program immediately after funding your account. You can even earn higher yields if you are an accredited investor via their bond offerings. They let you earn income on their ounces, paid in more ounces of physical gold. The interest you earn is paid in ounces of physical gold or silver, which you get in addition to any price appreciation from gold and silver during the year. Join thousands of investors earning interest in physical gold and silver every month with Monetary Metals. Visit monetary-metals.com/Delingpole to earn more. Welcome to the Delingpod, Paul Stobbs, aka Understanding Conspiracy. I'm really looking forward to this because I did what I never do, and I did a tiny bit of research and listened to a bit of your story.
Oh yeah,
And I think we're going to get on like a house on fire because I think a lot of our interests align. Now, obviously, we're going to have to talk about Nephilim Clowns, which is probably like asking Led Zeppelin to play Stairway to Heaven. But face it, you did discover the Nephilim Clowns, so you've got to go there again and again. But
of course,
tell me about. I think most of you've been recommended by some of my listeners, but I think a lot of them will be unfamiliar with you because you're kind of a different age demographic, aren't you? How old are you?
I'm 33.
Yeah, not 33.
I know. Illuminati confirmed. I know. That's it. It's over for me now. Yeah.
But it's probably the case that your audience is about your age, I would guess.
Well, actually, my demographics are around the 35 to 55 primarily. So I'm still in the young end, even as like a presenter of these things. You'll find there's no one below the age of 18 looking into this stuff. And even then, 18 to 25 is pretty small. It's about 5% of my demographics. I'd say about, you've got a good 15 to 20% within my age range, 25 to 35. And then the big chunk, 50% of it is in that.
It would be a very cool. I was thinking it'd be a very cool under 18-year-old who was investigating this stuff.
It's a unicorn. It doesn't exist from what I've seen, but yeah.
So, I've got to ask you to tell me about your journey because you were sort of new age-ish. You dabbled with DMT and stuff. By the way, is that your advice not to do DMT?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. No, I wouldn't recommend it at all. No.
Even though you see the grey men, but they're demons. Is that right?
Well, we'll get into it, shall we? Maybe I'll tell the story.
Let's go back. You're an art student back in the past.
Yeah, so I grew up in a relatively a-religious, not really a religious household at all. Typical British secular life, parents just lived their life for the weekend, and as you do, as just trying to get through as a working class family, in the northwest of England. My grandma was a Catholic, but that was really neither here nor there for me. It was just something that happened in the background, and I just grew up a normal, like I said, working class boy in the northwest of England. Nothing particularly outrageous about my life or anything unique. I was always an artist. I was always creative, musical, that type of thing. So I went on to do art most of my life and studies. I moved to Lincoln University to do my art degree there before coming back to the northwest again, where I am based now. And like I said, I wasn't raised Christian or anything of the sort. So my story is basically a story of being born again. I'm sure you understand what that means. I'm sure your audience understands what that means. And I came to Christ at the age of 24. 24, 23, 2014, March 2014, it would have been something like that. So I'm a relatively young, new Christian in the long-term scheme of things. But I'm also what I call a backdoor Christian. I wasn't raised in a church, so I don't know the rules of engagement or how I'm supposed to behave as a Christian, if you get what I mean, like at the church, what the church standards are for that. Well, exactly,
It's really weird. I think of Christianity as the biggest of all the rabbit holes because we're all trying to work it out.
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah.
Well, for me, yeah, for me especially, that's kind of what it was, So stereotypical art student. I went down the more psychedelic exploration, weed smoking, new age type ish route. I was never really a hippie or anything. You know what I mean? I wasn't really into crystals or chakra alignments and all that type of stuff. I never went that far. But as an artist, I love the whole sacred geometry stuff and the circles and the squares and the cubes and what you can create with the flower of life pattern. So I experimented with that quite a lot, visually speaking. Because just what I do in terms of being an artist. But that's as far as I kind of went into the new age, the way it manifested on me personally as a visual thing. But mentally, I was dabbling in like Eastern philosophies, the Tao, kind of listening to people like Alan Watts and his lectures on what it means to exist in consciousness. People like Terence McKenna were quite big as well, and had a bit of an explosion on the internet during that early 2010 period. All the lectures were suddenly being released long after their deaths, and it was inspiring me as a young creative person. So go ahead.
Alan Watts, not to be confused, of course, with Alan Watt, as he frequently is. They're completely different characters. Alan Watt, we like. Alan Watts, I've only heard a bit of him. Posh voice, smoothie salesman. Yes. He's selling something. What is he? Tell me what. Save me the trouble of listening to him. What's he saying?
So he's basically explaining in English what Eastern mysticism is. That's basically what he's doing. He's trying to. He's like I said. I think he went to seminary. He's that type of pretty much a posh speaking, private school educated man, a theologian type. Who basically went Eastern and started to understand that they have it right. He believes they have it right. And he tries to translate what they believe to English speakers, because there's a lot that gets lost in translation, because we obviously are quite Christianized and some of the language doesn't really make sense to us, or the symbolism doesn't make sense to us. He basically made a living just selling Eastern mysticism in a way that we could understand, and he primarily had an American audience, so that's kind of where his market was, But I listened to a lot of it, and it helped me understand the Eastern philosophy. And I empathize with a lot of it. I think Eastern philosophy understands a lot about the creation and how the creation functions in terms of duality, But I don't think it's not interested in the creator necessarily. And for me, that was appealing at the time, the hedonistic, narcissistic, drug-taking artist that I was. So that's kind of where I was for a long time, looking for spiritualism, looking for answers, because, psychedelic experiences can show you a thing or two. And it starts to make you think, okay, there's something going on here, spiritually speaking. I just don't understand it, So my default wasn't Christianity. It was to go down that route because I had no way to relate to Christianity. Like, I just couldn't relate in any way. So that's kind of where I went to.
You've said before, Paul, that we live in a culture, a sort of post-Christian culture. It's very, very hard to be a Christian in this culture where it's been made to seem uncool. You don't, as you said before, you don't talk about it. It's an embarrassment.
Well, exactly, and that's how I felt. And I couldn't relate as a young millennial. I was born in '92, So to me, I'm just so far removed from this idea of a Middle Eastern 2,000-year-old religion about a man being nailed to a piece of wood. Like, how does that in any way have anything to do with me? And that's how simply I thought about it. I had no reason to think any more about it than that, because there's no context. I can't contextualize it with my modern British life, it didn't make, so I went to this, but at the same time, there's a bit of a hypocritical thing though. So what does Eastern philosophy have to do with me and my Northern British life, So in a way, it's kind of that preference was there, because I think the philosophy appeals to you a lot more when it's all about you and your consciousness is God and all that type of thing. It's a very egotistical trip, and I think it does appeal to a younger generation who have been sold that individualism is king, So that religion kind of fits in a lot more and was easier to fall into. And as an art student in university, everyone was into that at that time. Joe Rogan was at his peak with his, Spirit Molecule documentary about DMT, and it was kind of, that's where we were. Vice was bigger then as well, the magazine and the show. So that's kind of what I fell into. But I always knew there's something wrong with it, because I think my grandma's Catholicism kind of was always there from a child and never left me, in a sense. So I always had that questioning, like, this is interesting, but this is not really having any tangible effects in my life, following these mysticisms and understanding all this kind of thing, and getting into like more of a Gnostic understanding of Christianity, about the demiurge and all that type of stuff, and how the flesh is a prison for our consciousness. And something was missing. It was never, you don't get good results following those philosophies. They're interesting and they can certainly explain the dualistic nature of how reality works. Everything has two sides, blah, 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 But the functionality of it isn't practical in a day-to-day life, and there's no improvements in your life from following that philosophy, I found. In fact, I think everything was getting worse for me at that time. And I fell into, during my studies at university, the conspiracy world. And at that time, in 2012, the end of the world was coming. The Mayan calendar was coming to the end, and the whole internet was abuzz with what this means exactly. The New Age is saying it's the age of Aquarius coming upon us, and there's going to be a consciousness vibrational shift to the fifth dimension in their extreme crazy terminology. And then the Christians were saying it's the rapture, it's the end times, or it's the beginning of the tribulation, or something like this. Everyone had an idea about what was going to happen. More the secularist, non-religious types were saying the poles are going to shift, and there's going to be tidal waves everywhere, or Nibiru's going to return from Zecharia Sitchin's work, and then the Anunnaki are going to come back and enslave us all once more. Everyone had an idea, and it sucked me in because I was fascinated. I was like, what are these people seeing that is making them say these things? I have to know, which is my inquisitive nature. I had to find out what they were looking at. What information were they finding to make them have such a belief system? And I came at it from more of a psychological, anthropological, analytic viewpoint as a case study for my artwork for my university degree, like the conspiracy theorist. Let's understand conspiracy, And I created this channel as a result of that. And as I went along down those rabbit holes, I started to realize, so there's secret societies, there's a suppression of Christianity, there's this New World Order agenda, there's this New Age religion to coincide with it, there's these long-running agendas to basically subjugate us all in some way, make us a slave class. David Icke lectures here and there. There's just lots of things bombarded all at once, like a flood of information came in. And I realized, okay, so these people aren't crazy. They figured some stuff out. They're just terrible at presenting it so no one can take them seriously. That's basically the problem. The presentation style's lacking massively because they don't have a huge media conglomeration behind them that can help them fund this type of thing. It's just people making videos on YouTube, And I thought it's the right information in the wrong hands is kind of the phrase I came up with then. Like, they don't know how to sell it. They don't know how to make people listen to them because they're so hopped up with fear and the screaming, do you see, look at this right now, that they look like the stereotypical tinfoil hat wearing crazy conspiracy theorists most people expect them to be.
Who are you,
and I wasn't happy
of here?
Just mainly the people making content on YouTube in that era. The people who were presenting these types of things then. And there was many channels. Many of them don't even exist anymore. The landscape shifted a lot since I kind of started then. But in that time, in that early stage of YouTube, production quality wasn't there to the point where most people wouldn't listen to them and wouldn't listen to anything they had to say about Freemasonry or Satanism or, like I said, the secret society stuff. The stuff that was just fringe conspiracy then, which I think is getting a lot more mainstream now, I would say. But then it wasn't good enough from my perspective, but I realized they're not wrong. No one takes them seriously. It's hard to, how do you bridge that gap to the normal person to get them to understand this stuff? And I felt like maybe I could step in, and maybe that's what the channel was really, as his ethos from the beginning. Like, how can we package this information in a way that's palatable to most people, that won't make them run away or reject it outright? And so the channel at the beginning kind of wasn't really Christian. It was still coming at conspiracy from that outsider perspective. We're going to look at it from the outside and understand it as a whole. Who are the factions in the conspiracy culture? You got the Christians, the New Agers, the whistleblowers. You've got the alt-right, the left wing, the 99%ers. You got Anonymous over there. It was, again, a different time. It's shifted a lot since then. But you could see there was like a factionalization within the culture of conspiracy, which really fascinated me in the early days. But as time went on, I started bumping into the Christian perspective a lot more. And that's when Christianity really started to come into my life. And in a way, I suppose it was very much a Christian evangelical type of Christianity, because that's what really you find online more than anything. But it got me thinking about the Bible more. And I started to eventually go there because I couldn't figure out why is this even happening? Why do we even have literal Satanists running around controlling the world, making sacrifices and effigies to Moloch the owl in Bohemian Grove? Like, how does that make any sense? Why is this even happening? If they believe in the devil, then maybe the God is real. So I got thinking about that concept, and I read the Word, I read the Bible. I started with Ecclesiastes. It's still my favorite book today, because I think that spoke to me a lot more as a message I needed to hear. Of Solomon talking about it's all vanity, and don't cling to anything on this earth, and the things you're chasing aren't the correct things. Keep your eye on God. And that kind of got to me at the time, and I took it seriously. And I kind of found the lectures of Derek Prince first, a charismatic Pentecostal preacher. Say what you want for the charismatics, they got their own style. I won't say I'm going down that route myself and speaking in tongues anytime soon, but his lectures were wonderful, and they spoke to me on a real getting to know the basic gospel type of level. And also the spiritual warfare aspect of Christianity, which is not something you really hear in many churches, especially not going to any Anglican session. You're not going to hear anything about spiritual warfare necessarily, but that fascinated me. That got me as an outsider to Christianity. It's like, I can relate to this because I myself have seen some things from my past life, Spiritual experiences are always something I've kind of had. Demonic experiences, we'd call them, and attacks. And this really helped me understand, so it's not all hopeless. We have weapons to use here that have been given to us, and I need to understand who this Jesus character is and what happened there exactly. And it got to the point where my degree was ending in 2014. I had this channel. I was coming out of I was burnt out from the drugs and the sex and rock and roll lifestyle of a stereotypical art student, and the philosophies of the East had got me nowhere but lost and confused and worse off health-wise and mentally, I was basically burnt out at the end of my fuse. And I'd heard about God and been reading and said listen to these lectures by this point, and I asked God in a hotel room in Newcastle at my now brother-in-law's stag do at the time, okay, if you're real, show me, help me, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going after this. I have no plans for the future. I'm at my wit's end. I've got nothing. I've got nothing. So I just asked God, please help me. And then I had a bath. Now, for context, I haven't had a bath by this point in about 10 years. I'd only ever lived in a place with a shower cubicle, and I hadn't been swimming since, I was, 15 or something, 14 years old. So it was kind of the first time I'd been submerged underwater in a long time. And as soon as I did, I shot out of the bath. I had this rush of intense feeling going through my entire body into my chest. I thought I was having a panic attack. I'm panting there in the window, and I'm like, what was that? But then I could say from that day, my life was completely different. And it seems like I accidentally baptized myself. I don't know if that's possible. Some people say yes, some people say no. I know what happened to me. I can only tell you, believe it or not. But from that day, I dropped everything. I don't smoke weed. I got off cigarettes. I haven't touched a single drug since, because I finally had this conviction over me I've never really felt before. I felt guilt for the first time when I sparked up a cigarette or a joint. I felt this voice telling me, what are you doing? This is wrong, and it's wrong. This is not what I have in store for you. You need to leave this behind. And I did. I went cold turkey on cannabis. I weaned myself off nicotine. And again, I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff. And my desires changed. Everything changed about me from that day. It was a truly transformative experience. I can't really convey. I can tell you it happened. But that's proof enough for me that God's real and that Jesus Christ is real, but it's a testimony, and I can't make you believe me, but that's what happened. And since that day, the channel kind of started to grow, and I really studied the Word, and I really got into biblical history from a Christian contrarian viewpoint, I would call it. It's not churchianity. It's looking into not only the main Gospels and the Old Testament, but looking at the extra biblical texts as well, the Apocrypha, the pseudepigraphical, the external books around it, and trying to contextualize it all. And I found the work of people like Gary Wayne very interesting. I don't know if you've heard of him before.
I've heard of him. I'm not sure what to make of him.
He's got this book here. Let me just grab it off the shelf so you can see. It's quite famous in the conspiracy circles. It's called the Genesis 6 Conspiracy.
Yeah,
get it on camera there. It's a massive book. Honestly, it's like 800 pages. It's a wedge. You could stop your door with it. It's one of those things, and it's just packed with information about mythology. We'll call it, from a Christian perspective, looking at all cultures around the earth and their mythologies and how this relates to the stories we can read in the Book of Enoch, let's say, or also just about giants, the Nephilim, and their origins and how they would have been created according to the Jewish myths we have, And it got me, it captured me, and explained where demons come from. And it has this narrative that angels rebelled against God on Mount Hermon. 200 of them made a pact to mate with human women, or somehow mix with human women and create an offspring. And that offspring then grew to be giants, mighty men of old, men of renown. And once they got too big, they started eating people, basically, and they couldn't really be sustained with food anymore, and it destroyed the earth. It became a problem, and sin crept in from every angle because of these things, not only due to Cain doing his own thing, building cities everywhere and subjugating people, but also the original sin of rebellion from the Garden of Eden all the way down. It seems like there's been this war between what we call the serpent and man for a long time, and the serpent sought to make his own seed, which would be the Nephilim, and he did that through corrupting mankind. And it's just an epic story. You can't get a better Hollywood narrative than that. You know, they need to make that film because it would be a smash hit and everyone would watch it, because it has this ring of truth that's kind of deep within the soul. Something weird happened here in the ancient past.
So
and
let me pause you there. So the Nephilim then, because I sometimes get confused. You've got the fallen angels. How does Gary Wayne know that there were 200? This is obviously extra biblical text that must.
It's the Book of Enoch. The first Book of Enoch just lays it out clear, the numbers and everything.
Specifically.
Actually,
and is that supposed to be a third of the heavenly host?
No, it seems like, from what I've gathered, there was a huge rebellion that involved a third of the angels.
Right.
Only 200 mated with humans, and they had a very specific punishment for what they did. And they had to be bound in chains under the ground, but not before watching all their children kill each other. So all the Nephilim wiped each other out in the end, in brutal, horrible, bloody wars. This is something like the Titanochemy of Greek mythology. Is a good way, another narrative outside of the biblical canon, you know. So that's kind of the narrative of the Nephilim.
So the Nephilim are the offspring of these 200 fallen angels, rebel angels, who've mated with humans. And they produce. So the Nephilim are the mighty men, the giants. But the Bible tells us that they were before the flood and after, so they weren't wiped out by the flood.
Well, yes, it seems there are many ways they could have come back, and I cover this in the first half of my own book, The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. So the first 10 chapters of my book are actually laying this out, biblical history from a Christian contrarian viewpoint. And I'm not going to lie, we don't have all the answers, but we have many ideas based on the biblical text of how that could have happened. So how did they come back after the flood, for example? And there's actually like 5 options here that don't break biblical doctrine. So the idea that, I'll give you one example. So we know they were there after, because it tells you they were. And then most of the early books of the Old Testament is going through the lands of Canaan and getting rid of them, you know, and that's what God told people, Israel, to do. Go out there and get them. And in Numbers, they come back with a report, and it's like, we're like grasshoppers to these things. What are we supposed to do? And God was like, okay, so you have no faith. Go wander the desert for 40 years and come back when you're ready, you know. And then they come back and they're ready and they go and wipe them out, basically. Almost. They just miss it in the end. But they had the faith to do. So we know they were there. We know they were dealing with giants in this land, you know, which we will call Israel today. But how? Because they were supposed to be created before the flood. Well, if you look into the book of Jasher, it talks about a time just before the flood, after the original Nephilim were wiped out, that there were some weird stuff going on genetically speaking. The mixing of kinds is kind of the phrase you see in the book. And it seems like man took it upon themselves to genetically engineer themselves, rather than angels mixing themselves with humans. So a new class of creature was created. We'll call them mutants. We'll call them X-Men. They used to be men, you know. They've changed themselves. They've become something other. Right. And I think this is where the modern cryptid phenomena comes from. Getting conspiratorial again. This is my working theory. So you have Mothman, lizard people, you know what I mean? The name an animal-human hybrid in the cryptid phenomena world. That's probably where these things came from. Humans mixing themselves with animals. Centaurs, harpies, mermaids, fish people, you know, that half and half blend.
And this is just before the flood.
Just before the flood. Now, a mermaid can survive a flood. That's no problem whatsoever. You know, it's water. And I think this is how, it's kind of like a legal loophole method. They managed to, the corruption managed to make its way afterwards. I think this is how it happened. One way. This is just one working theory. So, but I think in preparation for what was to come, they saw Noah building a boat for a long time. They knew something was coming. I think the Watchers who didn't mate with human women, who weren't bound in chains, thought, well, we can't mix with humans again because the punishment's too severe. But what we can do is convince humans to corrupt themselves. And I think that's one way corruption made it after the flood. So if you have the ability to fly, because you mixed yourself with a bird, you could fly above the waters and then rest on top of the waters and wait it out because your bones are hollow, so you can float, whatever. Or if you had the ability to hibernate like a bear, you could dig yourself underground and wait out the flood and sleep it out underground. There's methods you can do by mixing yourself with animals to wait out the flood and make it to the aftermath. And that's one way. Another way is that the knowledge to corrupt yourself was preserved on two pillars. People claim these are the two pillars of Freemasonry, Jachin and Boaz. Gary Wayne kind of goes into that quite a lot. And it's more that Nimrod rediscovered the techniques after the flood by unearthing the vaults that were hidden underground that had all this knowledge preserved, which give mankind power over their fellow men, but also the scientific knowledge on how to genetically engineer monsters. So that's another working theory. Nimrod rediscovered it and brought the corruption back with his tower and everything else. A lot of people say Nimrod was a Nephilim. It says he became a mighty man. And now not all mighty men are Nephilim, but all Nephilim were described as mighty men. So it's a bit of a interpret that how you want type of thing. Perhaps Nimrod Nephilimified himself. He turned himself into one with the knowledge he rediscovered. So there's just two theories. The other theory is that the genetics of the sons of Noah weren't pure. Only Noah was perfect in his generations. And his wife Namar also was not pure. So it's possible the genetic corruption that everybody had before the flood, because there was no one left pure other than Noah. He was the only one perfect in his generations. Through enough breeding, it's possible it came back through them, genetically speaking, like a recessive gene. So there are ways it can come back after the flood that doesn't make the flood a failure. What is certain is that the flood completely decimated the infrastructure that was built, which allowed for such a world where the Nephilim ruled as kings and gods. The fallen angels were worshipped as pantheons of gods, and all of humanity was corrupt and murderous and idolatrous and awful. All that was wiped off the map, and that reset laid the foundations for the world we have today, where we don't have to deal with these horrible things on a daily basis. So I think the flood was still a success either way, from God's perspective.
Well, Are you suggesting that the flood wiped out the fallen angels as well? No, they were still knocking about. I think. Where are they? Where do they go?
Well, I think they're in the heavens. I think an angel's still an angel, fallen or not. I don't think they change. I don't think they're just what's in their hearts has changed. They were rebellion against God, but I don't think they lost their powers. I don't think it's like the cinematic view of Noah from like Russell Crowe, where they turn into rock monsters, which is a complete fiction pulled out of nowhere. I think it doesn't say they changed their state necessarily, just that they lost their first estate. So they left their first estate means they left heaven. It doesn't mean that they were kicked out necessarily. They chose a side.
I see. And it wasn't with God. So you think that they're still sort of hanging around the heavenly courts of this kind of unwelcome...
Oh, yeah. But I think they're wholly concerned with Earth. I think they want to mess with us here. I think they're primarily here with us. And, angels are not constrained, from what I can tell, to human norms. They can take any form they want, and they can look like anything, and they're supernatural. They're supernatural entities, so they don't look like people, like many Hollywood movies and TV series will make them believe they were as well. If you look at descriptions of angels, like the vision of Ezekiel, they have the heads of many monstrous animals. Some of them are wheels within wheels encrusted with eyes. Some of them have wings holding up the firmament. And there are all sorts of shapes and sizes of angel and class of angel. And I think this is my working theory. Angels are fascinating because I think they play a functional role in the creation, like a cog in a watch. Okay? And I think if you look at other mythologies, dragons, for example, are everywhere. I think dragons are a class of angel called seraphim. Fiery flying serpents is how it translates. They're a class of angel, the closest to God, with the 6 wings singing holy, 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 and they cover themselves. I think they can take the form of a dragon, which is why they have the name seraph, which in the original Hebrew is the sting of a burning bite of a snake or a fiery serpent of some kind, And I think the seraphim angels, the dragons, were the specific class that primarily created the Nephilim. Because it seems if you look at other mythology like China, the dragons played an integral role in making things happen, like rivers and lakes and whirlpools in the ocean, or the tides, or rain, or clouds. They had dragons of many elements, elemental dragons that had a dictatorship over a region of the earth, and it was their job to control that specific power of the earth, be it the weather or thunderstorms or the oceans or whatever. And there's even a story in Japan where they left their first state, they left the ocean, where they should have remained, to make it work, to bring rain to the people, because the cruel, evil Jade Emperor wasn't bringing the rain to the people when they were asking for it, and they were dying of drought. So the dragons are the heroes in this story, and God is the devil, is the evil one who doesn't care about his creation, you know. So there's sympathy for the devil type of narrative. But it talks about them leaving where they should have been, and the punishment was that they get put underneath the mountains, and then the springs of water come from those mountains and become the 4 mountains of China, you know. So it's kind of this mythos around dragons, but the dragons are the heroes in their mythology, and I think they are a class of angel that was watching over certain regions of the earth, and they decided to take human affairs into their own hands and left their first estate as described in the Bible, and there was a severe punishment for that. The ones that mixed themselves with humans were put under the earth, just like these dragons were put under these mountains. So you see these parallels that I'm talking about here, but they had a dragon form. But when they left their estates, I think when the rebellion of the angels happened, it wasn't just like, oh, well, life goes on as normal now, but now we have these things wandering around that don't like us. I think they broke the creation. I think they should have stayed where they were because they have a function to do, to perform in the creation. And when you leave, it's like removing a cog from a watch. You break the machine. And I think that's what the issue of the rebellion was, and why we live in such a corrupt, fallen world that seems to just be cyclical and wants to kill us. Nature wants to kill us at every chance it can get, you know. And I think it's because the angels aren't playing ball. A third of them are not where they should be. I think when the stars began to move, the wandering stars, as they're described in the Book of Enoch, this is when the angels again left where they should have been. Stars are angels, biblically speaking, and when a star doesn't stay where it should, we call it a planet now that moves around. Well, when that began to happen, people started worshipping them and making gods out of them. And this is the issue with angels doing these type of things. From our perspective, we end up idolizing them and making gods out of them, which I think is... And I think this was all by design. This was the plan. This is why you have many of these pantheons of gods, like in Rome, synonymous with planets, because they were the same thing from the eyes of the people. And I think today, I don't know, I think they don't seem to function like they used to. They don't seem to interact with us like they used to. I think they would rather people don't believe they exist now. But you look at the stories of the past, from not just the Bible, but all these other cultures, they were there with the people, interacting with them all the time and being worshipped as gods, you know, before the flood and maybe just a little bit after the flood as well. But it seems like what Christ did put an end to it straight away. It was over after that. It is finished, you know, and he took the keys to death and everything was given unto him. All authority was given to him. And since then, we're in this new world where we can actually fight back now. Before then, we were pretty much whim to whatever the gods were doing, and there's very little defense we had, unless we had God on our side. And even then, it was only a few people, which he had at that time, who knew of him, and he was fostering and nurturing those people to bring forth the Messiah, you know. So there was a grand work going on to correct the original problem that the Nephilim caused, I suppose. And it took that long to get there. And because, well, his people didn't exactly help. They were always rebelling. They were always making mistakes, going back to idol worship. It was just a horrible, bad time, because humans are it's just the way we are. We're sinful and by nature, and God is long-suffering, and I think he put up with us for a long time to get us to where we are today, and I think we're in a very good position today compared to what it was like pre- and post-flood. So that's kind of the biblical narrative summarized, and I've told you there where Nephilim come from. So my work in the Nephilim Looked Like Clowns, I know what it sounds like. It sounds crazy, I know. It sounds silly. But what it really is a way to give context to a new generation, a hook to a new generation, to get them thinking about biblical history in a way they've never really been told before, to get them excited about the concepts of biblical history and the possibilities. And the clown aspect is just what my generation needs to get hooked, I suppose. And when you look into cultures that have ancestor spirit worship, well, they'll tell you, these aren't my grandma or granddad. This isn't my great aunties or uncles. These are primordial ancient gods that we're worshipping and communicating with. They are the spirits of the now disembodied giants. These are the Nephilim, who were ancient gods and kings and rulers of an ancient time. And you look at the costumes these cultures wear all over the earth, they have clownish features. white face makeup, red lips, big multicolored, colourful red headdresses made of feathers or reeds or gold jewels, really colourful ribboned costumes and patterns. From a Western perspective, it's basically an archetypical clown costume, but with culturally specific aesthetics. And what my work is breaking down all these cultures in every continent, and you can start to see a pattern emerge. And wherever demons are channeled, clown costumes are worn. So that's primarily what my work is about. And again, it's just a hook, but there is something there. And then when I looked into where we get the modern clown costume from, which is what the second half of the book is about as well, it basically explains clearly that it was introduced in the 1800s by the son of a very famous Freemason called Charles Dibdin, and the costume was basically borrowed from Indian Rakshasa demon iconography, like copy and paste. You know,
so
that's it.
Remind me, the clown outfit. You've got that horrible red hair. Was that there right at the beginning?
It seems like a Nephilim trait. Yeah, most descriptions we have. I mean, if you look at like America, they have a long history of contending with giants, the tribes of America. They talk about it all the time, you know. And one of them, which is really interesting, is the Paiute Indians. They had to deal with what they call the city car, which were these basically tall, white-skinned, red-haired monsters that ate people, giants, you know. And for a long time, they tried to live peaceably with them, but they wouldn't. They just kept stealing women. Women didn't come back. Sometimes they did, but they'd been messed with sexually, shall we say. The stories were horrible, you know. And it got to the point where the Paiutes had enough and went to war with this tribe of giants. And
global warming is a massive con. There is no evidence whatsoever that man-made climate change is a problem that is going to kill us, that we need to amend our lifestyle in order to deal with it. It's a non-existent problem. But how do you explain this stuff to your normie friends? Well, I've just brought out the revised edition of my 2012 classic book, Watermelons, which captures the story of how some really nasty people decided to invent the global warming scare in order to fleece you, to take away your freedoms, to take away your land. It's a shocking story. I wrote it, as I say, in 2011 actually. The first edition came out, and it's a snapshot of a particular era, the era when the people behind the climate change scam got caught red-handed, tinkering with the data, torturing till it screamed, in a scandal that I helped christen ClimateGate. So I give you the background to the skullduggery that went on in these seats of learning where these supposed experts were informing us, we've got to act now. I rumbled their scam. I then asked the question, okay, if it is a scam, who's doing this and why? It's a good story. I've kept the original book pretty much as is, but I've written 2 new chapters, one at the beginning and one at the end, explaining how it's even worse than we thought. I think it still stands up. I think it's a good read. Obviously I'm biased, but I'd recommend it. You can buy it from jamesdelingpole.co.uk/shop. You'll probably find that just go to my website and look for it, jamesdelingpole.co.uk, and I hope it helps keep you informed and gives you the material you need to bring round all those people who are still persuaded that, oh, it's a disaster, we must amend our ways and appease the gods, appease Mother Gaia. No, we don't. It's a scam.
Describes having long red hair and white skin, and in the end they had to corner them and get them trapped in a cave called Lovelock Cave. It's quite a famous story, and they were pleading with them, stop killing us, stop eating us, you're trapped here, like this is our last chance for peace. And they would basically say, no, screw you, you know, they're shouting out of the cave, no chance. So they blocked up the cave and set fire to the entrance and killed them with smoke. That's what the story goes. And then it seems like in 1911 this cave was just full of bat feces, and it's quite actually profitable they mine that stuff, and as they
wow.
were mining underneath, they started to find skeletons with red hair and like duck decoys, and there was stuff in this cave that matched up to this myth that was passed down through oral tradition, and it's really interesting when you get into this, and this is where you get the elongated skulls, like the Paracas skulls and the Inca skulls, when it seems like they always have like red hair attached to them in some way. And we have this modern tale of an Afghan Marines, I think that they were American soldiers in Afghanistan, who basically a giant came out with a huge spear with red hair and speared one of them, and they had to shoot it in the face like with 50 cal rifle bullets for 10 minutes straight to get it to die. And it's that's the story we have, But wherever you hear giants discussed, it's usually red hair and white skin. But we don't just have to look at these stories. We can actually go and look at the artwork of like ancient Greece, of Australian Aboriginal tribes, of Indian Hindu mythology and culture. Every continent has the depictions of man-eating giants. And when you look at them, they all have the same features. Red hair, very pale white paperish skin. So not Caucasian like me or you, not a bit pink or rosy or blush. White, like paper. Really sickly white, odd red, not ginger hair, blood red hair, unnaturally red hair is always the depictions, and a huge, big, wide smile, very wide, and often with tusked fangs coming out, massive bulging eyeballs, like huge, manic-looking eyeballs, and the body obviously depicted as very large and muscular, sometimes with wings because they were half angel. The Gorgon is a great example of this from Greek mythology. So most people think of a Gorgon, it's Medusa. And when most people think of Medusa, they think a snake lady with snake for hair.
Yeah.
That's actually not how she's depicted originally at all. That's a more modern spin on the whole situation. When you look at early depictions of her on pottery, she has a human body, but she has a horse under her arm, like it's a pet cat. So she's a giant. It shows her size. She has wings. So she's part divine. She's angelic in nature. Half human, half angel is mixed in there. Massive wide smile. Huge crazy eyes. Red dreadlocks. Not snakes. It's often how she's depicted with bright red dreadlocks. And if you look at the story of Medusa, she's actually the offspring of Echidna, the mother of monsters, and Typhon, the sea serpent god. So a sea dragon, basically. These are all the stories I was telling you earlier. Again, you get these repeat stories. And they created many monsters. So Cerberus, the three-headed dog, Chimera, the snake-tailed, lion, goat-backed weird creature, the goat that had the golden fleece, I think they birthed that as well. It's just the Sphinx. There's a whole list. Hydra, the dragon whose head gets cut off and more gets replaced. Echidna birthed them all with this serpent dragon monster god, basically from the sea. Now, Echidna is a siren. And a siren, she had snakes for legs, but a human body. So she's a human-snake hybrid, just as we were explaining earlier, that the humans were doing this to themselves. And in the Book of Enoch, it says, the women who went astray with the angels and had sex with them became sirens. So this Greek story matches perfectly to what I'm telling you. And she birthed the three sisters, the three Gorgons, Medusa being one of them. So if you look at, that's literally a quintessential Nephilim creation story. A dragon god from the sea mixing with a human snake hybrid woman, so a person creating a giant grinning red-haired monster that ate people. So there you go, that's a Nephilim story, but it's not in the Bible, but it's in these other cultures. And then let's go to the Wanginas. Let's go all the way across to Australia now. And in the Kimberley region, of the western regions so in like the centre-west deserts of Australia, they have these caves everywhere covered in paintings of what we can only call a clown from our perspective. It's a white face with big black eyes and a huge red afro. And they're everywhere. They're all over and they're called Wanginas. And they say they represent the rain and electricity. That's what they are. They're gods that bring rain and electricity. It looks like a clown from our perspective. Many of them even depicted wearing polka dot clothing with pom-poms on the chest. Honestly, like, I'm not even making this up.
While you do this, I'm going to have to Google this because I want to...
W-A-N-D...
Hang on.
W-A-N-D... J-I-N-A. Wand-Gina.
And should I put pictures? Wandjina paintings. Should I put...
Yeah. There's rock art, and then there's more modern Aboriginal art as well.
Oh!
Okay, so the story of these things is that
Stephen Chambers.
well, they are the offspring of the rainbow serpents. So giant primordial snake gods that supposedly created the earth we live on. So they had a part in creation, you know. So these are angels that went astray, we would say, and worshipped as gods, and these are the offspring of them.
Because I can
And
see
it's-
that Eric von Daniken would say that they're like space helmets they're wearing, but they're not, are they?
Well, there's many interpretations. I don't think they're space visitors. I think
No.
they're the Nephilim. It's their flavor of Nephilim. It's their version of the same thing.
Yeah, they've got big eyes. I see that, and
yeah.
it's very, very white.
Yeah,
Their
and often they're depicted with clown costumes on as well, even with a frill around the neck, like a
Yes,
Victorian
that's
frill.
what that thing is. It's a frill. Yes, I see. And stripy trousers.
Odd, isn't it? Why is that
Some of
in the
them.
middle of Australia? You know, and these are ancient, by the way, thousands of years old. These rock paintings. Only the shaman can come in every year and repaint them because it has to stay true to form.
Yeah.
Very sacred sites where these Wanjinas are. You're not even allowed to depict them outside of their culture. They'll sue you if you try.
Will they?
Artists have tried and been attacked by national heritage
How
cultures
can
and
you
things like this. You
copyright
know, it's because they're so
4,000-year-old
sacred. These are sacred primordial gods to this tribe. You know. And you'll find this copy-paste image is everywhere all over the earth, because I think every single part of the earth contended with the Nephilim. There isn't a single place on the earth that wasn't dealing with this situation. And they all have their own mythos and stories and ways of depicting them with their own material style, because they can only work with what they've got, you know. But you start to just put them together and you start to see the aesthetical similarities, break them down into their archetypes, the archetypical forms, and what you get is white face, red hair, colourful costume, colourful skin, often with a big wide grin and very large eyes. So that's a clown. That is a Western clown by our standards. And you realise, well, that's because the Western clown is an amalgamation or a caricature of all of these visages we find in other cultures. It's our version of the same costume or the same artwork. But in the West, it's a cult. We're not supposed to know it represents that. To us, it's just a bit of fun for the kids. But when you realise that literally Freemasonry came up with the costume and injected it into British pantomime or theatre, which was the most popular form of media at that time, and popularised it, and then you find the character of clown who used to dress in plain white servant rags, Elizabethan servant rags, no colour, you know. Pedrolino was the original Italian version of this before it became the British clown. Suddenly, in the 1800s, had this drastic costume change because it was introduced by a brand new showrunner called Charles Dibdin Jr., the son of an extremely famous Freemason, Charles Dibdin. Even today, Old Tom Bowling is played at the end of the Proms, a song he wrote. You know, it's actually...
Charles Dibdin.
This guy was
English, was he?
England. Oh yeah, Charles Dibdin. Yeah,
And
he
his
was a
dad was
composer, playwright, musician. He did lots of things. Very famous. He was equated with winning many British wars during the colonization period of India because his music was sung by the sailors of the British Navy. Like, he was commended. He's a very famous guy, a huge media mogul of that time. And his son was given, in nepotistic fashion, he was given heads of Sadler's Wells Theatre in London. So he was the new showrunner of Sadler's Wells. And he wanted to make his mark, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He changed the costume of the clown to this colourful, psychedelic, monstrous-looking thing. And everyone was like, what is this? This is crazy. No one's ever seen anything like this before. And the fantastic actor of the time who wore the costume was Joseph Grimaldi. And he was just hilarious. Just a very funny comedian. You could not watch this guy without pissing your pants, basically. He was just too side-splittingly funny. Like, everyone loved the guy. And he popularised the costume. But he didn't come up with the costume. He was just dressed in the costume by this showrunner. And he had a say in the makeup a little bit, but the costume, the dress as it was described then, was given to him by this son of a Freemason. Says, here, wear this, basically. This is the new costume for the new shows I'm writing. And it became the industry standard from that day. And now all modern clowns are based on that costume that was given to him then. And people don't know this. They think it was some kind of fluid, just happened by accident type of thing over time, but it really didn't. Like, it was injected into British theatre, specifically in 1799, by this son of a Freemason, whose father, Charles Dibdin Sr., was intimately linked with India. His brother Thomas was a part of the East India Company, colonising Calcutta at the time, and east of India. He went back and forth many times to visit his brother. He was even going to move there and live there, but he didn't set sail because of bad weather. because you would die if you set sail in bad weather during that time. It wasn't an easy to make a trip to India from England, by any standards. And he stayed in England in the end, but he loved India. He knew India very well. And as a Freemason, I believe he probably understood the demonic iconography quite well as well. And I think they brought it from the East and injected it into British theatre and dressed this classic character we call clown, which means clodhopper, colloquially speaking, in this costume, which mirrors identical to the costumes worn by the Rakshasa demons on the temples of Thailand and all over India. It's the same costume. There's nothing original about it. So modern clowns are modelled after Indian demons. There's no two ways about it. That is the facts of the matter. Like, clowns have never been... Well, before that point, maybe they were harmless fun. But after that point, you are now dressing in the same costume these other cultures I explained to you earlier are. Like the people like the Wangina. You're now dressing like a Wangina, It
does make sense, because lots of us are completely creeped out by clowns, and I don't think it's just because you've got that Stephen King Pennywise the clown, the horrible it creature. I mean, movies tell us what they're doing, don't they? And your Dib Dim character sounds like an earlier example of revelation of the method. It is showing us.
Exactly that. Yeah, I think it's the same thing. And today they still do it. And the costume of a clown. Why is it a big deal? Let's get on to why do these cultures dress this way that I'm talking about outside of this? What are these ancestor spirit worship cultures in Africa, in India, in Australia, in some places? We have it in Europe. The wild man tradition is our version of this in Europe, which goes back to Celtic tradition. And again, I've showed all this on my channel. Visually speak, this is a very visual topic. My channel has a series showing all of these things. I'm not just saying this, You did one Google search and you can see that there's reasons why I'm saying this, but these cultures wear these costumes specifically to channel the spirit. They are mirroring something that they think is in the spirit realm. And they mirror it in costume to invite it into their body, to be possessed by the spirits of their ancestors. They're not really their ancestors, but that's what they call them. And so there's a transaction for this. Okay, so now the spirit's in me, we'll give it things. I'll drink stuff, smoke stuff, have sex with stuff, take drugs or murder people or drink blood or whatever it is the thing wants. Different spirits want different things. And once you do that, you feed the demon with your body. So demons don't have bodies. They are disembodied spirits of Nephilim. They want bodies. And people who give them what they want. So you use my body, use my tongue, my eyes, my nose, my ears, my fingers to feel again. And I'll do stuff you want to feel once more because you haven't felt it in millennia. And I want something in return. I want invulnerability. I don't want to be able to be stabbed or bleed. I want the strength of 10 men, which is very useful for tribes who are at war with other tribes and this type of thing. So there's a transaction here. You're making a deal with the demon for something in return. And that's why they dress this way. They're trying to make a deal with the thing. Or in some cases, like the Theym, let's say, of India. You get one person who dresses in this extravagant clown-looking costume, and he comes in and does this ritual with fire, and then he gets possessed by the spirit, and then the whole village comes around and asks it things. They want to know stuff that only a spirit could know. How do I solve this financial problem? Or how do I deal with this argument with my brother-in-law? Or how do I do this? And it tells them things. It tells them things and gives them advice, and the person who's channeling the demon gets given stuff, and he has to eat it. So often he gets given a chicken, and he has to rip the head off the chicken and drink the blood straight from its neck. I'm not even joking, that's what they do. This is actually part of the ritual, because the demon wants the blood. Do you get what I'm saying? And it's like, you're not going to get what you want from it unless you give it what it wants first. And these cultures who don't have Christ, these demons are not scared of manifesting, because they don't think anyone at any moment is going to stand up and say, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, get out of here, you have no right to be here whatsoever. They're not worried about that, so they openly manifest. Now, in the West, what would happen if a demon manifested so brazenly or so openly? Well, we're highly Christianized. Someone's going to have a clue. Somebody's going to call in the name of Jesus and cast it out. That's not optimal. So how do you hide in the West and use the same practice of channeling them without the public realizing it? Well, there's no better disguise than a clown. Like, who's going to question the clown, And I think the secret societies who invented this costume use it for the same purpose, to channel demons. And to let demons come into our realm and to feed them and satiate them in many ways for deals and stuff in return. Because these secret societies deal in the occult. That's their bread and butter. The Solomonic sigils and rituals are what they die for. They're trying to rebuild Solomon's temple all the time, But then you look at the levels of Freemasonry. You've got shrining just above it, which is the Arabic order of Freemasonry, which you have to be a Freemason to be a Shriner, first. Why does this seemingly Middle Eastern themed sect of Freemasonry have a clown posse in each and every single chapter? They all dress like clowns. That's so odd. Why? When you start to bring what of course they do. Yeah, look in Shriner clowns. Very common. All chapters of Shriners have a clown section. All American circuses are owned by Shriners. If you didn't know this, there's a few odd exceptions.
I didn't know that.
But they're predominantly the main ones that still travel today and have for a long time, Shriner led. And they claim it's to raise money for the hospitals, the Shriner hospitals, where they look after sick kids with cleft palate and other things like this. Not major illnesses, minor illnesses, but it's free healthcare. That's kind of the guys. But I read a book by Sandy Frost, I think her name is, Vampires of Charity. Fantastic book, honestly. And she is a no-nonsense investigative journalist, okay? And she basically looked at the books for the Shriners and went through all the tax returns, and she realised none of the money's going to the hospitals. None of it. It's all going towards the Royal Order of the Jesters. Now, the Royal Order of the Jesters is the level above shrining, and you have to be a Shriner in good standing and be invited to become a member. You can't ask or apply. And they only recruit 13 members a year. 13, of course. And the Royal Order of the Jesters has been wrapped up in many human trafficking scandals. And it also, one story involves, on a fishing trip to South America, the impregnation of a 13-year-old girl. It gets really dark. It gets really bad. The Shriners are just embroiled in scandal all the time. And they have wild orgies and sex parties involving prostitutes and all sorts of things. And all the money's going to them. It turns out she's constantly exposing them, and they're always trying to shut her down and sue her, and she just keeps going after them again, and it's just a non-stop, she's wild, she's crazy. But that's in the book as well.
Do we know any famous Shriners?
Do we know what, sorry?
Any famous Shriners? Anyone famous who we know is a Shriner?
You can. They brag about their membership over the years. You're going to have to look into it, to be honest. Just go onto their website. I mean, many people have been Shriners, or many presidents, prime ministers. It's actually shocking how many people have been Shriners that are famous and very well known. Yeah, it's just go on the websites. They brag about it. They tell you who famous members are. Same for the Odd Fellows, another offshoot in America of Freemasonry. Many, King George IV was a member of the Odd Fellows, of all people. Many kings and leaders of countries have been members of these fraternal orders as well. It gets ridiculous. It gets really ridiculous. They're all in on it. It's a giant club, and you're not in it. But why?
Well, I don't think I want to be in it. If it meant having to wear a bloody clown costume.
Well, this is the weird thing. Why clowns? And it doesn't make any sense. And why is the Royal Order of the Jesters the highest pinnacle honour for a Shriner to be invited to? What's such an odd title? Well, not until you bring my work into it.
I have read. This is not my very first exposure to stuff about the Shriners, and I have read a long article, maybe by you, I don't know, about the weird badges that when you become president of your local thing. And they're often sort of grotesquely sexual, the imagery on these badges that they have.
It's called a billikens. So it's a little baby with an erect penis and a winking eye, basically. And the billikens was said to be created by an art teacher in the early 1900s. And it's supposed to be the god of things as they ought to be, is what they say it is. I don't believe the exoteric story they've given us. The esoteric truth is it's a representation of Bes, the Egyptian god of good luck and sexual reverence and jokes. Basically, it's an Egyptian god masquerading as a modern invention, and Bes is like a good luck talisman, we'll call it, from Egyptian mythology. That seems to be what it really is. And yeah, he's often depicted in this version as very white skin, elongated skull, weird, creepy, long smile, jewels for eyes, an erect phallus as well. And the slogan is mirth is king, or something like that. So everything is about joy and mirth, And it's supposed to be a faction about just having fun. But when you look at the type of fun these guys are getting up to, it's really bad. It's really awful stuff. And it's under the guise of charity, And that's
these
what
are the
her book
ones
is
that
about.
also wear fezzes, aren't they?
That's the Shriners. Yeah, the Shriners wear fezzes. The Jesters tend not to have a costume. You don't know much about them. They're very secretive. They've wiped the internet clean as much as they possibly could of any of their forums or websites after the scandals all broke out and after whistleblowers started talking about what they're up to. But the FBI files are still there for you to go and read because they got caught, and it's they can't hide that, unfortunately, but they can definitely remove the public presence now and mitigate as much damage.
They own the FBI, so they'd be able to get this stuff wiped clean. Why not? I mean,
well, you'd think so. Maybe they have to leave it out there, but you can go and find out if you go look for it what the results of these court cases were. And in one case where they were trafficking prostitutes over state lines to Canada, there was a judge involved, a sheriff, a state judge, and one of their clerks involved, or something like this. 3 men, and they all got off with a slap on the wrist, basically. They got away with it. They got it was a public scandal, but they tried to bury as much as they can. There's only one article you can go read about it behind a paywall for the Buffalo County Journal or something like this. But when you actually look at all these things, they basically got about $10,000 fine and a suspended sentence. So they got a slap on the wrist, don't do it again. So they got away with it, but you can go and find these documents of what happened, and no consequences whatsoever, basically, for the most heinous of human trafficking acts. It's really horrible. And that's just what we know. That's just what the public, the ones who got caught, who knows what they're actually up to, but the whistleblowers talking about what these parties are like, it's crazy.
Parties.
Oh yeah, worse than that. Way wilder than that, and highly just debauchery at its highest form. And that's where all this charity money goes from the circuses raised by the Shriners, by the way. So there's a hard link here, but the clown itself, the costume of a clown, is actually no joke, because it's just a copy, our version of what these ancestor spirit worship cultures wear. So when you find secret societies who deal in the occult wearing the costume, you can only question and put 2 and 2 together from my research. And it's kind of, look, I can't prove it, but it's evident. I've got evidence to back the idea up, It's odd, it's strange, it's very strange. And so my work, funnily enough, I don't actually talk about clowns that much. This is the irony of it all. The clown really is the hook to bring people into understanding how the occult operates, how symbolism works, and what biblical history actually is. And like I said, my generation, it just takes the clown to get them, for their interest to be piqued. And in a way, it's kind of is a phenomena that has drawn in a lot of attention over the past few years. Like I said, I've got a series now with like 45 episodes visually depicting all of this. The most recent episode was on the Jesters specifically, so it's all fresh in my mind, which is why I can talk about it right now.
I'm gonna look at that episode. Because
it's actually a reading from the book. It reads the chapter from the book with images. So if you want to know what the book's like, you can listen to that episode. And it is directly from chapter, I think it's 17 of my book, or 16 or something like that, or at least a part of that chapter. So yeah, that's to summarize my work on the clowns. The clown costume is a caricatured carbon copy of the same costumes worn by these ancestor spirit worship cultures all over the earth, who use it to channel and commune with spirits. Spirits are only the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that were once on the earth. It's explained in the book of Enoch that once they died, they were stuck on earth. They can't leave. They don't have the breath of God in them. They're not compatible with heaven or hell, for that matter. They're from earth they came, from earth they remain. They're stuck here, okay?
Yeah.
And they want a body. So that's where demons come from. They're not fallen angels. They are the offspring of fallen angels that are stuck here on earth with us. That's demons. And that's the only thing on the other side. There's nothing else there. And they'll lie to you. They'll tell you all sorts of things about who they are and where they come from. People who do psychedelic trips think they're talking to themselves from the future, or the Palladians from the Pallades constellation, or aliens, or interdimensionals, or whatever. They'll come with all sorts of names. Jesters are often seen in the DMT realm. DMT jesters are a repeatable phenomena. You take DMT, you get jesters more often than not, because the only thing there behind that veil, that illusory veil that we don't only perceive of the earth, are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. So if you want to channel them and communicate with them, you need to find ways of creating that channel. The costume is just one. Many people use drugs, ritual, sex, sacrifice, all sorts of ways, but the costume is certainly something that will often be involved, because again, you mirror something in the spiritual, you can give it a channel to get through to the physical. As above, so below is an occult principle, but it actually is true. That's the methods they're using to do this, and we need to know the weapons used against us so we can arm ourselves as Christians. Spiritual warfare is serious, and these are kind of the underhanded tactics that get used, So every year there's always a revivification of the Joker or It. There's always a reboot of Stephen King's It or something to popularize the clown costume. And then during Samhain, when the veil is thinnest between the spiritual and physical realm, we dress like clowns, or a good portion of people dress like a clown. And often, what do people do during that time of year? Mischief and debauchery and parties and excess and the rest of it, because that's what the demons want. They want a body to experience those things again. And it seems like we do a lot of things in our culture which we think are harmless fun, which can kind of invite them back in. We have Red Nose Day every single year in Britain, when you really think about these cultural rituals we do every year. What are we actually doing when you understand what a costume of a clown truly represents? We need to be careful as Christians, especially, and understand these things are actually serious. Like they do have an effect. And I don't think our intention really matters. I think ignorance of the spiritual laws will not make you immune to the spiritual laws, just like law works in real life. You don't get away with it because you didn't know you were breaking the law, and that's my work summarized on the clowns very quickly as best I can do with the time we've got.
You did it very well, very efficiently, brutally efficiently. Actually, it was good. Stephen King, he's definitely in the big club.
Seems like it. Yeah, he knows a thing or two from his work on it. It's eerily similar to what I'm talking about. So Pennywise is an interdimensional creature from the realm of the Deadlights, whatever that means. That's his fictional reality he's created in his world mythos. He has his own lore, and a lot of creatures come from this realm. And Pennywise is one that comes to our realm every 27 years to feed, but it can only manifest the more fear is around. So it tends to. It's a shape-shifting entity that presents itself as whatever its victim fears the most, and it feeds off that fear, that energy, to feed itself. And there's a lot to be said about that, about demons being energy harvesters. Like energy, like everything's energy, and fear is like a food source to them. I've heard that quite a lot in many occult circles, and it seems like that's kind of the game. They can feed off of fear. It's actually really is a tangible. It makes them stronger, and it's a food source. So I think, based on that basic demonology stuff, it seems like Stephen King just made a fictional narrative based on it. And obviously the clown is very prevalent. And I think maybe he knew a thing or two when he did that. It wouldn't surprise me. He's just privy to the knowledge, which has been around at least 200 years, like I said.
Do you think we should stay away from circuses?
Probably. I wouldn't recommend it, but at the same time, I don't think many people who are clowns and in the circus know this. They don't know any of this.
But you said earlier, ignorance is no excuse. You're still
well, that's the problem, isn't it? So, but I don't want to blame them like people who dress like clowns are bad people. They're just people. They're just we're all sinners and we all need to be saved, and we all have problems, and we're all ignorant to some extent of the laws we're breaking. And I think that's the same for them. So I don't want to demonize people who dress like clowns. What I want to demonize is the demons that those costumes can help facilitate manifestations into our world. I want to demonize the demons, not just people who put on a costume. I think, again, I would say they're being naive about the situation. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So I can't attack trapeze artists and say you're clearly one of them. I don't want to do anything like that. But personally, circuses themselves, P.T. Barnum, quite a famous odd fellow. He invented the three-ring circus as we know it today.
Yeah.
And he was a bit of a charlatan, a bit of a money maker, a businessman more than anything. Didn't really care about circuses. He got into the game very late in life. He was in his 60s when he joined the circus game and teamed up with Bailey to basically have his menagerie of animals mixed with his odd little theatre of trinkets and oddities from his museum. And they created the freak show and the three-ring circus and the animal circus as we know today. And they traveled the world doing it. So, they'd actually travel across continents, but mainly America doing this. And the three rings is the symbol and logo for the Oddfellows. It's three interlocking rings. So he incorporated into the three-ring circus his own sect of Freemasonry's logo. He put the symbolism in there.
What is a three-ring circus?
A three-ring circus is literally there's three circles all next to each other under a massive tent, and there's animals in the middle of the podium of the circles and people doing tricks around and horse tricks and backflips. It's 3 rings. It's a big, massive spectacle. Prior to that, it was just 1 ring. A circus was just 1 ring and everyone sat around it. But he made 3 rings, you know. But when you actually look into it, the membership of the secret societies he was a part of, the Oddfellows, Albert Pike was a member, King George IV was a member, like I said. Like, there's been many famous kings and rulers who were members of this, but also actors and mainly actors and performers who were also members of the Oddfellows, which again is very odd. What are kings and presidents and generals doing mixing in a fraternity with actors and trapeze artists and musicians? It's just an odd blend of characters in one fraternity. What if they were all playing a role? What if they're all actors on the world stage and there's actually no difference between the ones we know as actors and the ones playing the role of a ruler on the world stage as an act? You know, I do wonder if that's what was going on with that specific secret society. But like I said, P.T. Barnum was a member, and he incorporated occult symbolism into the circuses. He injected it into them. Prior to that, circuses were just horse tricks. The first circus was created by I think it's Philip Astley is his name. He was an old British general who opened up an amphitheatre in London. And it was just horse tricks. You run around in a circle on a horse. Yeah. And the centrifugal force means you can do tricks on the horse without falling off as long as you keep up the speed. Okay. And that was the trick. You know, do backflips and handstands on horses. And everyone went to go see this, you know. But then just next to him, these 2 Freemasons got together, Richard Hughes and Charles Dibdin, as I mentioned earlier, and opened up the Royal Circus just next door and took all his business, basically, and hijacked the principle and the company and the idea. And they brought with them the new clown into it. And that's where clowns were first injected into circuses. So again, a Freemason affair. A complete hijacking of something that already existed, turning it into their own, occulting it. And then when it moved to America, it failed quite a lot because America was an expanding nation and they found stationary circuses didn't make money, but traveling circuses did. And when train lines were laid down, that's when it really took off. And that's when Barnum got involved. And that's when you had the big top tent being invented. And that's when you'll find no matter where you begin, from clown to modern circus, the secret societies have been involved at some point. And then once it was in its full swing, 10 Freemason-led circuses, you can even find the newspaper clippings for this, all of them led by Freemasons, all got together and put on a massive show called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And they travelled all throughout America putting on this show, even went to Europe. I think a famous artist from London who was a Freemason, Barossi Coralfi, created the artwork for all of this. All the costumes were made by the Henderson Arms Company. The company made all the costumes for the Freemason lodges, for their rituals and performances. All the backdrops are made by the same companies and made for their Freemason lodge rituals. Completely in-house Freemason affair, from head to toe. All kept in-house, all the money made for Freemasonry to recreate the spectacle of Solomon's court in circus form, with animals and everything, thousands of cast members all dressed in ancient Babylonian clothing and Egyptian clothing, you know. And why were circuses doing this? Well, when the circus came to town, you went. There was nothing else to do back then.
Doesn't it?
That was the main form of entertainment. So I think that's why they did this. That's what got people's attention back then. So that's what they had to control. So they got it, and the Illuminati music industry or film industry, it's been going on since theatre circus times. They've always been there dictating what the message is, you know, and again, circus is absolutely no different. So should you go to the circus? Well, probably not.
Yeah,
when you look at it, you know.
Why is it like you shouldn't go to the cinema? I was thinking, as you were saying all this, like, doesn't it kind of make you feel you missed out by not being a Freemason? Because, I mean, it gives you access to this like, arcane knowledge and this power that I mean, unless
at what cost?
Well,
at what cost?
I agree.
No, you get the whole world, but you'll lose your soul.
Yeah,
and that's what they promise. It's worldly power. And as Christians, who cares? Who cares about worldly power? What's that going to do for you?
Yeah,
nothing. You can't take it to heaven. You can't build treasures in heaven. It's simple.
Can I ask you? You made the point that in the East and in Africa, presumably, and in the outback, you can revive these. You can conjure up these demons without the risk of somebody calling on the name of Jesus to get rid of them. But the clowns aren't really able to drink blood and have sex with lots of women in clown outfits in the West. I mean, it's not that good a cover, is it? So say
No,
you're
well,
a
I
demon
think
and you're trying to come into with a clown outfit, you wouldn't have that much fun.
the clown outfit just makes it easier. There's many ways you can allow a demon into your body. You don't need the clown costume. You don't need any of that. I think it's more about allowing them in with permission. If you want to work with a demon and you're willing to make a contract and deal with it, then yeah, you can do that without the costume. I think in these other cultures who have a lot more ritual and tradition behind it and veneration of their ancient gods, and they tend to wear these costumes a lot more and incorporate them into their yearly rituals, because often they want something like rain for a harvest or something. There's more of a
the demons
cultural
can
reason.
deliver that, can they?
Well, a lot of them are rain gods, primarily. Yeah, it seems
They
like
can.
they're intimately linked with thunder and rain. Most of these are. The Heyoka is a good example of this in America. So you have the Pueblo Indians from the Hopi tribes in more the Nevada region, the desert region, where it's dry and arid. And they dress in black and white stripes lined clowns with silly floppy antennas and red lips and red shoes, and they do these ritualistic dances. And these are called clown societies in Western anthropology, because the clown is like a shaman to them. The person who dresses like this is the channel to the spirits. He's very important. We need him. And he's also a contrary. Everything he does is contrary to how you should behave, to remind us how we should be behaving. It's like he plays like a social glue role in the tribe. Now, that's in the Pueblo Indian tribes. And usually when they dress like him, they do the rain dances to bring rain. They want to commune with the spirit it represents and bring rain, please. We want rain. We need rain. We're dying here. We're thirsty, and we want our crops to grow. So when they do these dances, it's up to the shaman to get it right and communicate with the rain gods, otherwise we're screwed. They really take it seriously. It's very serious to them. It's not like a joke. Like, to us, it seems primitive and silly, but it's really not. They know, they believe it, But then when you go like further north into the Americas, and then you've got what's called the Wakinyan spirits. It's a different tribe, okay? And they dress in the exact same way, okay? Black and white lines, fractal patterns, and same antenna, everything. Same costume to communicate with the same entity. But they're saying, please stop the rain. It's too rainy. Like, please stop it. You're killing us. Like, the floods are coming. It's horrible. We would just want warmth. We want the rain to stop, please. So two completely separate tribes, separated by thousands of miles, and America's huge, separated by 1,000 miles, both dressing the same way to communicate with the same entity for two different reasons. One wants the rain, one wants you to stop it. So that's a good example of the utility behind the costume. It's to get in touch with a specific entity for specific reasons. And yeah, it seems like they do have powers. They were they were half angel. They have power. They do have some kind of weird power, supernatural things we just don't understand. I don't think we can quite comprehend. There's a reason why they were seen as gods of an ancient time, because they had abilities beyond human in nature. The Wangina spirits are rain spirits. Like the costume you see them wearing with polka dots underneath, they're supposed to be a cloud, and that's rain coming from down below. That they are intimately linked with the weather, but they also have a physical manifestation, and it's giant clown-looking thing, just like these black and white stripe-looking things in America. And I think there's a variance between how they looked in the physical. Look at a snake. Not every snake is the same. A viper is not the same as a corn snake, or an adder, there's many variety of snake and different colors and shapes and patterns of snake. I think that's the same for these Nephilim spirits. But then you just got to look at the commonalities and the threads between them, and that's where you get what looks like a clown of many shapes and sizes and colors, basically. But like I said, there's utility behind the costume. I think that the Heyoka is a good example. So the spirit they're actually trying to get in touch with is called the Wakinyan, the rain spirit, the rain god, the thunder god. So what they do, the Heyoka dresses. The Heyoka is the shaman. He dresses in this specific Heyoka costume. But what he's trying to do is mimic the Wakinyan spirit. The Hopi dress in their costume, again, to get in touch with the great spirit, the Wakinyan, the weather bringer. So there's links, they have their own names, their own slight different styles, but the fact it's the same costume and they're not even related to each other is uncanny. Because they all had an experience with something similar, is what we're understanding here. And again, it's cross-continental. It's not just a isolated incident in one continent, not at all.
Some of this stuff must have been quite tricky to research, because there seems to have been this concerted effort by the kind of archaeological community and the museums and stuff to suppress evidence of this stuff. Like, you must have looked into the Smithsonian, and they're hiding the bodies of the giants. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, there's a whole chapter in the book about that. And yeah, it seems like giant bones have been discovered. They were being discovered en masse in the late 1800s and throughout the whole 17th century, basically. All we have are old newspaper clippings as evidence now.
Yeah.
So we don't have the bones. We have thousands of accounts of local newspapers announcing the discovery of giant bones. Okay, and they're all over the place across the entire nation of America. Well, obviously, where the printing press was its full swing, and the money behind such things, everybody had their own newspaper back then, so they were all talking about it. But if you look at the names involved with these announcements, it was very reputable, famous archaeologists of the day in those regions giving the interview, and you had no reason to doubt their credibility, or no reason for them to believe they were lying to you. These were university professors. These were people, experts in the field, digging up the remains of giants in these serpent mounds all over the northern continent, burial mounds, basically. And what they're getting is like 7 foot, 9 foot, 13 foot, 18 foot. They get bigger and bigger, all varying sizes. And they're giants. They are,
what was
and
the
they
biggest?
don't fit the narrative. Oh, I think the biggest one was probably around about 20 foot or something like this that we know of. I don't really know, but it's just silly sizes, Who knows how big the biggest were? I mean, the older Nephilim, the ones way, way, way before the flood, were said to be like the size of mountains. And we're possibly living on top of their remains today and building houses for all we know, And there's a lot to be said about petrified fossils and the petrification of flesh into rock. It can be done.
Oh, do you think
it's possible?
I've seen images of that on the internet. Do you think that those are real? Do you think they are?
Well, there's the work of I've actually got his book. It's funny. I just interviewed him. He was actually the first guy to ever get arrested for the crime of hacking. Fascinating. It's called Mike. He has a channel called Stellium 7. He's just published this book about it. Really interesting. Side tangent.
Is he a good podcast guest?
He would be. He would be fantastic. Yeah, I'd definitely get you in touch with him. Yeah, and I just had him on my channel to just talk about this book and his past as a teenager going into hacking and getting arrested for it. Incredible story. But he actually has a YouTube channel now talking about fossils, and he calls it biogeology. And he's basically making the case that a lot of the stones and geology we see out there is just solidified flesh, but from giants on a mass scale. Even animals, he's saying it's insane. And he has a lot of compelling evidence, like a ridiculous amount of it's I can't even do it justice. You have to go watch one of his own lectures. But it's possible this ties in with the biblical narrative perfectly. So if all the giants did wipe each other out, and then you just got giant bodies all over the place. I mean, eventually you can't move them. So what do? You just wait, don't you? And maybe a flood would bury a lot of it, and then the right conditions would probably cause it to petrify and turn to stone. So it would make sense that many of the mountainscapes we see today in the hills, and there could be the remains of these giants for all we know. It's a theory, it's an idea, but they're the biggest. The ones we're finding in these mounds seem like post-flood.
Yeah.
They were here after the flood giants, you know what I mean? And it seems like they were being unearthed, and they're not as tall as the originals, but they were up there, I mean, King Og of Bashan in the Bible, he had a bed that was 13 foot long, made of iron to support his weight. That's in the Bible. That's right there. I think even Goliath, wasn't he like 11 foot tall, 10 foot tall, or something like this? Like big by any man's standards. By our standards, that's huge. But they're not like the towering behemoths of numbers. And we're talking like these lesser, smaller offspring of giants as he went down. I think they got smaller and smaller and smaller throughout each passing generation, more human-like as time went on, less clown-looking. And I think this is where you get these oral mythologies from like the Paiutes, for example. You're probably talking like maybe 1,000 years ago. Not too long, but not ancient, you know what I mean? And then that tradition passes down, and then you find all these skeletons buried under these mounds or in a cave covered under bat feces. You know what I mean? Way after the fact.
So you've got
that kind of thing.
Here's the thing. So up until probably the mid-19th century, you've got reputable archaeologists in the US digging up these giant bones. You've presumably got people traveling among the Indians, collecting their folklore, collecting their stories and writing them up. So when you'd think that this tradition would have continued. Now, something must have happened to suppress these stories, to suppress this research.
Well, you have to understand a lot of the natives of America were genocided.
But I'm talking about white anthropologists collecting their stories. What's happened to their books? Who's hiding this stuff? Where did it go?
They're still around, but you just they're not mainstream. They're seen as quackery or nonsense or pseudoscience. So they've not been mainstreamed or taken seriously by institutions like the Smithsonian, which at the time kind of had a monopoly over history.
Okay, so I want to know about the Smithsonian, because clearly, if it's Freemasons owning the circus industry, I suspect there's probably some kind of shadowy thing in charge of the Smithsonian. What's going on there?
I don't know enough about the ins and outs of the Smithsonian to give you that kind of stuff, that answer. But I can tell you somebody did take over the Smithsonian who was an extreme evolutionary theorist. Like, if it didn't fit the narrative of evolution,
right,
it was scrapped. And he was notorious for it, and actually quite a dictator about the whole thing. And I can't remember his name now. It is in the book. Like, again, this is a long time. I wrote the book like 2 years ago, but it's documented in there. And there's people who did some great work on this, which I've referenced quite a lot as well. And you can find the writings on this. But a guy did kind of take over in that time period where the giants were being discovered. And it seems like wherever they were discovered, the Smithsonian would turn up, confiscate the bones, and then you'd never see them again, and they would never be documented again after that. But what you do have is the first discovery of them being announced in these newspapers, and the first initial interviews with those who have discovered them. Do you know what I mean? So that's the residual evidence we have, but no books were made about it. No writings officially were put about it. You weren't allowed to make a book about it or write about it, because you would lose all credibility as an expert of the time, because it didn't fit the narrative of evolutionary theory, and it was all about eugenics. It was popular around about then as well. And I think it was all kind of, we can't have giants in this narrative. We're supposed to be getting, we're supposed to be getting better, right? Not worse. If we used to be giants, that means we've shrunk. It means that doesn't fit the narrative of evolutionary iterations of improvement. So it's kind of, we can't have that, because also we're going to the idea that superior races as well, and this idea that you can make the Ubermensch and that kind of stuff was very popular in that era. It's not just a Hitler thing. It was that all throughout the 19th century, these ideas were very popular.
Oh yeah, George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells,
exactly.
So club.
But giants knock it all out the window. It's kind of like, you're worse than ever. We are pathetic in comparison to what our ancestors used to be, if we are descendants of these specific types of giants. Because I think also I do leave room here that not all giants necessarily were Nephilim by our standard, because I do think humans may have been bigger at some point as well. Just people may have been a lot bigger, and maybe we're finding a lot of remnants of those as well. But the Nephilim were like a very specific, were like grasshoppers in the sight type of giants as well. So there's a lot here we can't fully parse out or understand, because I wasn't around. All I've got is loose bits of information we can put together into a book and say, well, this is what we've got. Figure it out. We have all the pieces of the puzzle, but the whole picture isn't necessarily there right now.
Have you looked into? I've had a previous podcast guest tell me it's all fake and it's all nonsense, but I'm not sure. The Tomb of Gilgamesh. Have you looked into that at all?
The only thing I've seen about it is Hillary Clinton's emails about how we're supposed to secure the Tomb of Gilgamesh. And I saw some pictures which were questionable about his body being perfectly preserved or something like this. I know people think Nimrod may have been Gilgamesh as well. And it's just the same guy by many names in many mythologies. And he was like a Nephilim. But I'm not so sure about that either. What do you know? Tell me what you know.
No, I mean, look. For starters, I think that if that email is genuine, Hillary Clinton is one of the most evil women in the world. I mean, I've heard this from Jessie Sabota, who was a mother of darkness. She says that most of these people are in evil because they get sucked into it. Only a small percentage of them actually enjoy it, and Hillary Clinton is one of the people who actually enjoys it. I think that what she doesn't know about the forces of darkness isn't worth knowing. So if she's saying in her email that if she knows about the Tomb of Gilgamesh I suspect that she's not making this stuff up, which would maybe lend credence to. I mean, there is a theory, isn't there, that the Second Gulf War was really an excuse to take over the territory when they could extract all this key. The key DNA, maybe even. I mean, that's one of the things they seem to want to do. They want to seem to extract.
If it wasn't artifacts which have information and knowledge on them, then it was to find mummies and remnants of what we're talking about today, perhaps to extract the DNA for utility of mixing your kinds again, doing what it was before in the days of Noah, you know. And there is the whole revelation aspect that, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man, which is this prediction that before the end times really begins, it's going to be like it was just before the flood. And before the flood, it wasn't Nephilim walking around, it was men mixing themselves with animals. It was genetic manipulation, genetic engineering. So people have made the argument that must be what they're trying to do again. Maybe that's what they're looking for, to be able to do it again, to make super soldiers or to make these hybrid creatures once more for their own utility for whatever reason. But I don't know about that. I mean, that sounds interesting on the surface, but in my field of study and research, I've discovered that wherever we are on the timeline may not even be where we think we are in Revelation, never mind any of that. So I don't think we should be looking out for the Antichrist. Well, I don't know, but I think there's a strong case to say we are post-millennial reign, living in the little season of Satan just before the final Great White Throne Judgment and the Gog-Magog War. And we're not waiting for the mark of the beast or the Antichrist or a temple to be knocked down or any of that stuff. That it actually all happened in 70 AD, more likely. And Christ already ruled and reigned on earth for 1,000 years with his resurrected saints. Now we're living in a short time after that where the devil's let loose from the pit and he gets to deceive all the nations one last time in his last season.
So we've already had Christ's millennial reign.
Oh, well, trust me, this is not something we can just discuss easily.
No, funnily enough, somebody said to me that when are you going to do a podcast on Satan's Little Season? And I just didn't know who to do a podcast. Who's the go-to guy on this? Are you the go-to guy? I mean, who's...
It was me for a long time. But I have made promises to my family not to continue doing it because it brought with it a lot of problems.
Did it? What sort of spiritual warfare problems?
Oh, both physical and spiritual, we'll say. Now, look, I believe it. I think it's true, personally. I've got hours of content and interviews already on my channel you can go and watch and listen to. Yeah. But it got to the point where basically an entire movement got started, and I feel like I accidentally spearheaded the whole thing, thinking I was just talking about something interesting. I think cults got made in the end as a result of it all, and people took it and got really weird with it. And then I think people wanted to hijack the whole movement and the concept and the idea and lead the concept themselves. And that's when I started to get attacked publicly for just nonsense, you know. Okay. But it got to the point where it's like, this is too much. We're not safe anymore. It got to like that for me and my family.
It's not your favourite topic
so I decided to I'm now coming out of the spotlight. But there are plenty of people still in the game who would happily do an interview with you about that. If you're interested in what I had to say about it, go and watch the interviews I've already done, I would say. I did quite a few for like a year. Yeah. And there's a lot there. Is all I'm saying. And a lot of people just dismiss it outright because we are waiting for Christ to return, predominantly in Christian theology. That's what we're waiting for. But I'm a conspiracy channel, so I look at the alternative views and the possibilities, and it's not just based on nothing, is what I'll say. Biblically, this is grounded. It's grounded in the Bible. That's where all the evidence comes from primarily. And then externally, we can look at the conspiracy, and you'll realize, I think this is why we have a conspiracy. The grand conspiracy, why we even have secret societies, is to rewrite history and bury the fact that Christ was already here for 1,000 years. And we're squatting in the remains of that kingdom that was on earth, physically speaking. But this is not the be-all, end-all, because we're not here to wait for the physical kingdom or the 1,000-year reign on earth. We're here for the new heaven and earth that comes after all of this, after the final Great White Throne Judgment. Being saved doesn't mean you get to avoid tribulation, then rule as a king for 1,000 years on earth. Being saved means you're written in the Lamb's Book of Life. You have a place in the kingdom at the end of it all. That's what it truly means. So I think a lot of people get upset when we talk about this concept because they think we're saying, well, where's our blessed hope now? You're taking it away from us, you know. You're just like Hymenaeus and is it Philetus in Timothy, who made people think the coming had already come and gone and made people lose faith. It's kind of like, well, when Paul said that in that letter, he was talking to a very specific group of people at a very specific time. And yes, he was right to rebuke them because Christ had not returned in that time. But he did return about 20 years later. So now it's not wrong to say such a thing. Do you get what I mean? So it's kind of a lot of the problem with this theory is context. A lot of people don't understand who he was talking to in those books and in those letters. It's audience relevancy. Who was he talking to? And when he says this generation will not pass away before all these things are fulfilled, do you think he meant the people he was telling it to? Or was he talking through them? So it will get written down for a generation 2,000 years later to be talking about. What makes more sense? You know, and you have to start thinking like this about it. But because most modern theology, dispensationalist theology, especially futurist eschatology, that it's all yet to come, and obviously you've got or most churches teach that, Catholic or Anglican or whatever seminary school you go to is teaching this, it's yet to come. Or perhaps a version of amillennialism where the millennial reigns forever and always. We're in it now. It's an indeterminate amount of time. It's a metaphor. What we're saying with this theory is, no, it's real. It really did happen not long after Christ said. He didn't come back. He hasn't taken 2,000 years. He came back exactly when he said he would. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD during the Roman-Jewish wars. Yeah. And there was a huge destructive event in the early antiquity that wiped out 98% of the population. It's called 536, the worst year on record. And if you understand that the timeline's wrong, like there wasn't 500 years between that event, but maybe 50 years, then it all did happen. Tribulation already happened. All of it happened. And then there was a kingdom that was built on earth from the resurrected saints who were promised to make it through to that point. And if we look around, we have a style of architecture that's on every continent. And it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's magnificent in its structure. We don't build like that anymore. And you have to question the narrative. People with horses and buggies built these en masse on every single continent, perfectly in structure. And all these churches that were built on every single continent that were immaculate and beautiful, these cathedrals, all perfectly depicted the saints as the exact same thing, no matter where it was or what was going on, like they knew what they looked like. It's very odd. The whole thing starts to get very weird. And again, this is a very deep down the rabbit hole stuff. Yeah. Cannot explain it all thoroughly today. No. What I just said is going to make a lot of people angry in your comment sections. Immediately, I know it is. I just say, hear it out. Just hear it out. Go check out that work.
I think it's a good one. I think it's really good. I listen. I like a good rabbit hole. I'm just a bit. Honestly, I'm kind of gutted that Christ isn't going to come and reign for 1,000 years. If that's the deal, you know.
Well, I know, but be happy that what's to come next after all this is a new heaven and earth, the perfection of all things, the finish, the end of the story, and then it's eternity. Which is what you really want, isn't it? Isn't that what we're after?
I do want eternity in.
It would have been nice to rule as a king for 1,000 years on Earth, though, wouldn't it?
It would have been good.
I understand. I understand the disappointment. But again, this is the problem with me. It's kind of I wasn't raised in the church being told that.
Black-pilled as well.
Yeah, well, I wasn't raised in the church being told any of this stuff. Like, right, we're going to wait for Christ to return and everything. So when I came to Christ, it was through a personal revelation experience, and a lot of stuff happened after I came to Christ. Demonic experiences, being saved by his name and calling on him. And my faith is that he's real. It's not necessarily through the book alone, though the book is great. It's through personal experience. So when I'm looking at these things, I'm looking for answers. I don't have like a preconditioned dogma that was taught to me through some kind of church system. Yeah. But a lot of people who were raised in the church are extremely offended about what I just said there. Very offended by it, you know, and it's kind of, how dare you take away my blessed hope type of attitude. But they know what I just said. They know it speaks to them on a level that they just don't want to accept.
Paul, okay, I think you're underestimating the Delingpole audience. I think a lot of them are getting, yeah, this is like,
good,
really interesting. Yeah,
good.
Tell us more.
Is your audience predominantly British, or is it a bit of a mixed bag?
It's about 50% British, and then I suppose probably American after that, just because America is big audience, and then they're all over the world. So everywhere.
Yeah, so my audience is predominantly American. And my British audience is about 10%. So for me, this is a rarity to actually talk to someone who's British. I'm normally talking to an American at 9 o'clock in the evening. I rarely do get to do this in the afternoon like we're doing, to be honest. So it's a breath of fresh air for me.
I can't be doing with evening pods. My energy is all drained by that. Probably by the demons. They've drained me.
Probably. Yeah.
Battling them. No, and I have to try and explain to America. Actually, it's not so bad because a lot of Americans get up quite early. But I'm saying to you, look, it's really okay for you to start doing your podcast at 9, and then I can record with you at a decent time in early afternoon. But any later is just I'll be knackered. It won't be fun.
It's hard. It's hard for me. I'm not going to lie. It's tough. It's tough, and I would love a different schedule, but right now I've got 2 kids, and they're asleep. Hopefully by 9, and that's when I can actually get any work done. Right now, the wife, one of them's napping, and the other one I just dropped off at my mum's house to help me have that freedom. And my wife is doing some work downstairs as well. So you're very lucky you've got me this afternoon. To be honest,
I can't say I missed that period of my life. It is knackering and thankless. By the way, I wanted to ask you because I think we have another thing in common. Many years ago, I had this really bad acid trip, and the worst bit was when this man on the end of my cigarette, who was wearing a tall black hat, would not go away. Now, is that the Hat Man or whatever he's called? Is that a demonic entity?
Possibly. Again, there's a whole chapter in the book on the Hat Man specifically. Now, I can give you my exploratory analysis of everything I can know about the Hat Man, because it's something I've kind of studied on the channel a lot, even before the Nephilim Clown work, to be honest. And this is what I know about this character. It's a recurring character for a lot of people. A lot of people see this in many ways, in dreams or through drug experiences or sleep paralysis. It's often lumped in with the shadow people phenomena. So people who are in sleep paralysis are surrounded by shadow figures. And the Hat Man is like a specifically shaped shadow with a hat, and glowing red eyes or orange eyes or something like this. Now, if I were to summarize quickly, I think he's kind of like a lawyer or an accountant for the spirit realm, for the demons. He makes sure contracts are being fulfilled. He's doing the grunt work, the business side of things. I think he always turns up when there's something to collect, like a tax collector.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a spiritual tax collector is a good way to describe him. And my first experience with the Hat Man was through a dream. So I had this dream where I was in a quintessential British Victorian maze garden, and I had a bunch of dead relatives having tea outside, drinking tea on these Victorian metal garden furniture chairs. And I was invited over, and I said, "Oh, great to see you all, great Uncle Albert, who I've not seen in 6 years," It's that type of thing. But in the dream, it's normal. These are all normal occurrences in dreamland, And I had some tea, and as soon as I took a drink, they all disappeared. The colour had been sapped out of the landscape, and I got a phone call on an old Motorola flip phone with an antenna for some reason, And I answered this phone. I was like, "Hello," and this voice, clear as day, said, "Don't think I forgot about our previous conversation. I'm coming for you now." And then suddenly, on the horizon, is the Hat Man. And he's wearing this purple trench coat with a long-brimmed purple hat. Multicoloured ribbons, like a Morris dancer, just flowing off behind him in many directions. Very colourful, but he was emanating like a cold darkness. I can't explain it. The whole sky was grey behind him and black and just dark, like a typical British winter day in November right now. You know what I mean? It was just horrible. Yeah. Everything was grey. And I had just fear in my eyes, like in my body. You get stuck to the ground with fear and you can't move. So I tried to run away, and it's like pushing through molasses, swimming through the air hard. And I go into the maze garden and try and get out through the maze. But luckily, it's a tiny, hip-sized hedge. So I just climb over and get to the other side. I don't bother trying to figure out the maze. And I get through to the other side, and I'm on a street. A typical British high street, but everything's in Russian. I don't know why it's in Cyrillic, but everything's in Cyrillic for some reason, probably because it's dream letters or something. Anyway, I run, and I get to the end of the road, and it peels away from me, so it's just a big chasm, and he's right behind me. I know he is. I can feel it. He's right behind me, and I'm adamant I'm going to die. I'm about to die.
Yeah.
I owe this thing something. He's come to collect it. I'm going to die. This thing, I owe it something. I don't know what. I do not know what. And then I woke up screaming and wrenching and sweating in fear. I forced my eyes open and then got out of that nightmare. But I do remember when I answered that phone call in the dream, I had a memory of another dream. A dream I had had months prior, maybe even years prior to this. And when he said, I'm coming to get you now, coming to collect what you owe me, I remembered this dream where I'm on stage in front of millions of people at some hellscape festival covered in mud and planks of wood all
Glastonbury.
laid on top of each other. What?
It's got to be Glastonbury.
Maybe, I don't know. I've been to
It's got
Leeds
a
Festival a
pyramid
couple of
stage.
times. It wasn't a pyramid stage. I don't. It was just like a festival, but everyone was screaming. It's like it was hell. You know what I mean? It was
Oh,
just
it's that
a
Hellmouth
horrible
thing. What's that with that rapper had where various people died?
Oh,
where you had the Hellmouth.
Astro World. Astro World, yeah. But it was just everything was mud, and people were like on top of each other, on top of pedestals everywhere, moving through it. It is screaming constantly, and it's like either it's hell or a festival. It's one of the two. And I was on a stage in front of millions of people, and that's what I'm seeing this vision in front of me with this phone in my hand, with this hat man coming towards me, and it's like whatever I did in that other dream, I made a deal with him clearly. And he was coming to collect in this new dream.
Yeah.
And after I woke up from that, I went wild. I had to research this. Like, what the hell was that? You know. And I found this book at the time, written by someone called Heidi Hollis.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of the Hat Man before this dream, by the way. It's
No.
completely out of the blue
I hadn't
for me.
when
You know?
I met him. It
Yeah.
hadn't been pre-planted in my head. It was completely new to me.
But even the front cover was exactly what I saw. Did you get what I mean?
Mine had a
towards me.
taller hat than that.
Well, it's yeah, I think he comes in many sizes. It depends what he feels like wearing on the day. I guess I don't
Yeah.
know, but it was coming at me, you know. And this is just full of accounts of people's experiences with him. I was like, I'm not the only one, so this is a recurring problem, you know. And my inspiration was sparked ever since that experience to find out who this character is. And I interviewed a young man on my channel. He's got a channel called Cryptid Candy, and he makes very interesting, deep rabbit hole videos about cultures online. And there's a culture online that has made a whole thing out of taking Benadryl tablets, hay fever tablets, and because there's a specific chemical in there called DPH, which is a deliriant, and it actually is extremely dangerous. You can die from overdosing very easily. It's extremely addictive, and if you take too many, you have a nightmarish trip where you go to hell, basically. And people make this whole culture about taking 700 milligrams. That's the dose. And you become a member of the 700 Club, which is like a secret Discord that was online. And the thing is, if you do take 700, it's said that the Hat Man comes to you and personally invites you to become a member of the 700 Club. They tell you about it only then. And where you go, according to this underground subculture who do this regularly, is a place called Ariel. And Ariel is the realm of the Hat Man, and it's full of like shadow spiders and all sorts of horrible monsters and him, and it's his world, and he wants you to come to him, and you get to him specifically by taking an ungodly amount of this extremely poisonous chemical found in Benadryl, which is basically kills you. It's poison. It punches holes in your brain, which is what causes the psychedelic trip. It's a deliriant. You know what I mean? It's not like taking acid. This is like a nightmare every time. It's hell. But it's also extremely addictive. So people keep coming back for more. Yeah, it's a horrible thing. The whole culture, but people are proud of doing it. Do you get what I mean? Like in this culture, it's very
Like being
weird.
a
When
US
they talk
Marine
about,
or something. It's like the being.
yeah, but they
Luger or
connect
something.
with the Hat Man by doing it specifically. He's the god of this world. This they call Ariel. So he's clearly a demon in his own right, with his own realm of some kind. Heidi Hollis, the author of this book, she thinks it's the devil. I interviewed her, and she thought it was actually the devil himself. I don't know about that, to be honest. I think he's got better things to do. But it seems like some kind of collector of some kind, or is like he's there to make contracts with people. He's there to get people in the demonic world, or to keep them there, or like I said, to make sure that that link is made in some way. He maintains the deal. That seems to be what it is. So going on my work on the circus, if you look at Freemasonry, the leader of a lodge is called the Grand Worshipful Master, and he wears a top hat, and he's the only person in the lodge allowed to wear a hat, because it's supposed to represent the crown of Solomon in the court, and only the leader can wear the crown. So they use a black top hat. Why? I have no idea why it's a black top hat, but it's supposed to be the crown of Solomon. So is this King Solomon in some way? And then if you look at the circuses, which again are a model of Freemason
ringmaster with his
lodge
top hat.
rituals, he's the ringmaster with his top hat who orchestrates the ritual and controls the clowns, which are the demons. If you look at the story of King Solomon in Jewish mysticism, Jewish myths, he had a magic ring, and he could use that ring to summon demons and use it to build his temple. So King Solomon controls demons with his ring. The ringmaster controls the clowns in a circus. Do you get what I mean? So it's kind of
And the ring of
there's
power
parallels there.
from Tolkien,
Yeah, it's the ring
who
of
would
power.
probably
Yeah.
into the occult as well.
Well, like I said, demons, clowns, Solomon, demons, temple, ritual, rings. It's all there. It's all one thing. It's the Lord of the Ring, you know. And that's the Hat Man who orchestrates the ritual and orchestrates the clown. So is the Hat Man like a general of demons? Is he like a leader of many of the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim? Is he perhaps a principality, a power, an angel, a fallen angel who has dominion over that specific group? Is he the one who's like middle management, like looking over the realm of the demons, making sure everything's being run properly, because the demons left to their own devices won't follow through, or will make mistakes, or will need performance reviews or something? Is he like a boss of that realm in some way? These are many working theories I've got. If you go to Vodou, or the Vodun religion, Vodou, Papa Legba, Baron Samedi, these characters which are summoned and channeled by dressing in a top hat and a purple suit with
Yes.
a cane. And that, again, is because French Catholicism and Freemasonry kind of took over Haiti with a population there with African slaves as well. And they all kind of blended together to create this odd Catholic-looking, Freemasonic-looking African ancestor spirit worship religion, which we call Vodou, which is in Haiti primarily. And they dress like a Freemason master, but they call this person Baron Samedi, or Papa Legba as well, which is one of the many gods of the pantheons of the Iwas, I think they pronounce it. I could be pronouncing that wrong, but they have their own mythology behind it. But again, it's the Hat Man, and they dress like it to channel him. So there's many ways that in you can either dress like and channel him, or take Benadryl to get in touch with him. It turns out there's other ways, you know. And I'm not promoting any of this as you should do it, but he's an odd character, and people do communicate with him. And if you look at any shaman, most shamans in any traditional culture wear a hat. It's a part of the costume. Witches wear hats. For that same, wizards wear hats, like with big brims, you know. In Korea, the Modang shamans of Korea, who do these rituals called a cut ritual, and at the end of the ritual, they cut themselves with knives on their tongue, and they don't bleed. And that's to prove they have a spirit in them. It's a part of the ritual. And if they can't do that, they've failed. And the person who paid for it wants the money back. You know what I mean? They have to prove it, because people pay them to do this, to communicate with spirits for advice. And during that ritual, they wear a big pink top hat. It's very odd. And it's kind of like, it's a tool. Not only is the hat an important tool for channeling for shamans, but he's also a recurrent theme in this specific character, which is, again, some kind of weird shadow entity that is witnessed by thousands of people repeatedly. So when you saw the Hat Man at the end of your cigarette, it's not uncommon. It's odd.
Yeah.
I don't have answers, but I have a lot of ideas and thoughts about it, and I've been looking into it, you know.
That was a very interesting. If that wasn't an answer, that was a very interesting semi-answer and digression. I tell you,
something like that. Yeah.
Well done. No, on the subject of contracts and things, and this is currently where I am down the Christianity rabbit hole. It seems to me that there is stuff going on which is very contractual. That it is like a court. There is a sort of court of heaven, and Satan is the adversary. He is the witness for the prosecution, and it seems to me that it's really, really important that you atone for every one of your sins. That you make it your business not to go to the grave unshriven, and you need to get yourself sorted out, because otherwise they are going to completely screw you over on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your understanding?
Well, yes, but also as a Christian, we have the best lawyer. We have Jesus Christ on our
We
side.
do.
And we're covered by his sins. Well, our sins are covered by his sacrifice.
But we also know
And I
that
don't think
straight is the gate. We also know that you've got to. It's not a kind of one-way thing. You've got to work. You've got to work for this. You've got to.
Yeah, I think faith produces good works, but the good works themselves aren't the things that save you. Absolutely, I think that the good works are evidence of the faith in many ways. But there's a lot of people out there who, when they hear me say something like, I think I'm a legalist out there, saying Christ's work wasn't enough. You know, so you got to be. There's a lot of sensitive people out there who don't want to be told that maybe you should be doing some good things while you're at it. You know, they want to believe they can just carry on sinning and everything's perfect and okay. I don't think that's the case either. I think we're called to be set apart as Christians. I think we're called not to conform to the ways of the world. We're supposed to be seen as different to everyone around us, because in order to bring them in and inspire them to want to know God and to let God into their life, you know. And I do think it's up to us. The burden is on us to be a good example as Christians. Absolutely. And if we're not, we will have to give an account for that. We will have to answer for why didn't we do enough. Like, I don't know if your salvation is necessarily at risk, because Christ's sacrifice does cover you, but it'll certainly be embarrassing to try and explain to God why you continue to do those horrible things. You kind of, would you want to be that guy who's doing that as well? But at the same time, I don't want to diminish Christ's sacrifice. I think it was enough to cover us for our sins. But if you're not trying to live as righteously as possible, in a way, do you really believe in Christ's sacrifice? Do you like, or are you taking advantage? Are you in it for the free ride? You know,
other rabbit hole, because of course, you see, I'm reading this amazing book, which I really recommend. Have you come across Everyday Saints?
I'm not. No, I'm not. Tell me about it.
You've got to read it. You will absolutely love it. I think he keeps changing his formal title. So I've got one edition by Archimandrite Tikhon and one by Metropolitan Tikhon. He is a senior member of the Russian Orthodox Church. He's also Putin's confessor reputedly, but he's a very, very interesting character, and he talks about his life in the monastery, in the various. He starts off at the Pskov cave monastery, and these monks, they're pretty serious about their stuff, but the really, really serious ones are the ones who lock themselves in a cell and basically become these hermits and just spend their whole life praying. Now, there is an argument which will be hard to bear, but it's those are the only people who are really, really, truly following Christ's injunctions. They are completely. You've got a wife and children. You do a podcast. One can argue that you are not completely renouncing the world, and that therefore you're a failure. I mean, I don't believe that, by the way. But you see what I mean? It's hard to know exactly what the deal is.
Well, I do feel like this is just, so think of Paul, not so saith the Lord. There's a level of narcissistic egotism to thinking that you're more saved than somebody else because you did more, or did more ritual, or perhaps did less than others in some way, like doing nothing at all. What are you? Are you now super saved as compared to that person over there who's just boring, simple saved? You know, are there levels of being saved, or is it enough to profess with your mouth that Jesus Christ came in the flesh and rose from the dead and his sacrifice?
Well, I don't know. I mean, are you having a go at those monks?
I think there's a sacrilege. I think there's a sacrilegious nature in this time where people think you can work your way more so than others, and I think that's where problems arise. So, sure, they are there locking themselves away from the worldly things, okay, but they're still in the world, just not of the world. Sure.
But I know. I think
what use are they to people
having a go at
really doing any of that?
I think you're accusing the things that they themselves are certainly not. They're certainly not saying they're better. They're saying that they are so stricken with sin, and so they're not saying this is how you should do it. I'm talking about ideas here.
Well, in a way, have they not let sin to the point make them useless?
No,
they say they're free from sin and not sinning anymore. Therefore, they're okay and they're safe. But by doing nothing, is that not a form of sloth in a sense? Is that not wasting your life?
I don't think
is that not
there's no. I don't think there's any sloth involved in being one of those monks. They have a pretty you should read the book before passing judgment.
I'm not. I don't know. Like, I'm not read the book.
I'm throwing ideas out rather than threatening your. You're obviously. I can tell. I mean, you're a very devout Christian, and you're obviously doing. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just throwing out ideas for discussion rather than.
No, I don't feel attacked. Trust me, I'm not. I'm not taking this personally. It's just my opinion on that kind of pious nature, that overzealous pious nature of. Yeah, there's another monk. I can't remember his name. Who stood.
I think you read the book. It's very interesting.
Send me the link. I'll give it a read. Absolutely. I mean, there was another Orthodox
Everyday Saints.
Monk,
You'll remember it. Everyday.
I think
Saints.
wasn't there a monk who was on top of a pedestal and stayed up there?
Simon Stylites. Yes.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
And they had to convince him to come down with a fake meeting, something like that. I can't remember how it went in the end. But it's kind of these acts. I understand the nature behind them. I get the intention's good. I'm not saying like, oh, this is just performative and virtue signaling or something like this. But I think there is an element where, as Christians, I feel like it's best for us to be in the world, out there in the trenches, talking to the people, to the sinners, and trying our best to get that message to them. And I don't think anything of this world can defile us if we're saved and covered by Christ, but we're not called, obviously, to go out there and purposefully go and sin and eat food sacrificed to idols and all this type of thing if we know better. But it's not what goes into us that defiles us anymore. It's what comes out of it's our hearts. It's what we speak. It's the words, our actions that count now. And I think this whole reclusive nature of which, again, is understandable, perhaps if that's what you need to not sin because you're so hardcore into it and you need to just cut yourself off completely, then so be it, each to their own. I don't think but I won't say that makes them any more of the right way to do things than any other Christian. I think Christ's sacrifice is enough to cover us all, and it wouldn't be good news otherwise. Because it means there's still work we have to do. It's not take away the have to do, the pressure, and I think people will do better works. Do you get what I mean? If it's either are you free from the law or under the law? And it doesn't mean abolishing the law and not following it anymore. But if you have to follow the law or else you're punished, that's not you don't want to follow it. That's not. It's different than you're doing it because you have to. I think Christ's sacrifices makes us want to because he died for us. So what can we do for him? Do you get what I mean? It's a different situation, and that I think that's what the gospel is truly about, personally. But that isn't to say that what they're doing in any way is jeopardize their salvation or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just not how I would do it. But then people would say, "Well, who the hell are you? You know, these guys are clearly well-educated Orthodox Christians who are part of a very well-established church, going back to the apostolic successions at Pisa." And I've heard it all, and it's kind of okay, fair enough. But that's between me and God, isn't it?
I think, Paul, what we've just demonstrated is that Christianity really is the ultimate rabbit hole. It's just kind of, there's so many tunnels to explore, and it's great. And I've loved talking to you. I kind of think we're going to have to do another podcast sometime, because I feel that there's loads of stuff you can talk about beside the Nephilim clowns. Would that be right?
Oh, this is just one. This is just something I've nurtured since 2016. Yeah,
well, we should, if you fancy, maybe you can suggest a few areas that I can prod you in, because I can just wind you up, and you're like you'll just go.
That's why I have the channel. If I didn't do it here, I'd be doing it to my wife, and she'd leave me. So it's best I do it here instead. There is get that. It out,
There is that. Well, it's been great talking to you. So tell everyone where they can see more of your stuff, and where we can find you, and where we can buy your book, and all sorts of things.
Sure. So YouTube, Understanding Conspiracy, and you'll see my logo here. You'll see everything. You can't miss it. If you want a copy of the book, it's just on Amazon. It looks like this. Just type in The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. There is an audiobook. I just released it earlier. I did the whole thing myself on this very microphone right here. So that's also out as well. The book matches the audiobook perfectly. So this is now a second edition that comes out. If you want a signed copy, you can email me at understandingconspiracy@gmail.com. I've got a stack right here. I'll just send them out to you. But that's it, really. I do have a podcast called The Truth of Therapy Sessions. I am wearing the T-shirt now, and I've been sipping from a mug I've got as well, because I'm trying a new merch store, and they sent me some free stuff, so there you go. But that is a weekly Sunday show where it's about the journey of waking up and telling your friends and family, the rejection that can come with that, the stages of grief you end up going through when you start realizing the world is not what you thought it was, and it's about that journey of coming to terms with the reality of the situation that you discover, So this The Truth of Therapy Sessions is what it was, and that's, again, become a podcast with over 107 episodes and now still going. So you can watch the live show on my channel on a Sunday, but that gets released wherever podcasts are the next day anyway. And that's it. I do a live show on a Wednesday Q&A as well, and I release videos in between about any topic relating to conspiracy you can imagine. I've probably talked about it. So
Actually, that's what I just realised we've done a 2-hour podcast, and we're both conspiracy theorists, and we haven't actually talked about conspiracy theories. So,
well, it's because the truth always ends up going back to Christ anyway. That's the truth of conspiracy. If you want to know the truth, that's where you'll find it. It ends up going. That's why you have a conspiracy. Because of what he did. So look into that, that's the end game. So I'm not surprised.
Thank you everyone for watching and listening. If you want to support me, please do, actually. Why not? I love you all, but I especially appreciate those who make the effort and become paid subscribers. You can support me on Substack, on Patreon, buy me a coffee, or you can support my sponsors and come to my events. And thank you for listening, and thank you again, Paul Stobbs.
Thanks for having me. God bless.